It's 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is any additions, deletions?
Nothing that I have.
I guess not, which is good. This is an opportunity for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Is anybody here to comment on anything in particular? All right. The next item on the agenda is kind of a formality, but as we know, Aaron is resigning from the select board, and the board wanted to have his position in the election rather than make an appointment, which we had the option of doing either one. We thought the election was the best way to let everybody choose, not us necessarily. So to do that properly, Aaron had to resign and actually get off the board to warn the position to be being open. And now we have an empty position until the election, March 3rd. So we put out that, is anybody interested in being appointed to the board in the interim until that time? We've had no applications except Aaron. I won't have you say, will you talk about yourself? Unless there's any objection, I'll nominate Aaron Kimball to take the position as select board, and I'd offer as vice chair through March 2nd, which is town meeting, and until the election.
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Tom. Any discussion? Pretty simple. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Yeah, no, you can't say aye.
Damn.
Hey, look what I found.
Get that made for me?
Yes, I just had it made.
And all difficult questions, please
take 'em.
give to Aaron. All right, next item on the agenda is the third of 3 weeks of full discussion about ambulance coverage for the town. As we know, St. Mike's, after 50 years, is stepping away. That leaves an opening for how do we get ambulance coverage. We had a committee working. They collected a lot of great data. And then Renee took the reins for several months, collected a lot of data, talked with a lot of people. We all learned a lot. We continue that discussion. I think we've mentioned the last couple weeks and this week, we're full of first responders, particularly Hinesburg folks, but we've had people from Richmond and South Burlington and Charlotte, Burlington, all members of first responders. And I definitely want to, and Williston, yes. I definitely want to acknowledge that. I think the last time I was here, it's quite humbling to know that any one of us in any of those towns could need help, emergency help, and all those folks are more than willing and anxious to, leave thetheir lives to the side and come to our aid. So I would just like to acknowledge that. Yeah. So this, again, the last 2 weeks I think went pretty well. We will open it up for folks to either present more information or ask questions. I ask those that are asking questions to ask them to the board, unless you have a specific question for a specific person, which is fine. But other than that, you'll be speaking to the board. I'd like to acknowledge the process up to this point on the board side, and really everybody we've worked with and talked with. It's been as open and honest as we can, so when we've presented information, it's the best information we have. We came into this, the entire board, and the town administration, with no agenda. I'll say personally, I keep getting more information. I go, that's really good to know, that's important, that's good. And so, my personal feelings have swayed around quite a bit. And I think everybody here has been very open, and so I just want to acknowledge that. In particular, I'd like to thank Renee for the work that she helped in corralling us and this information to get to this point. A successful point, I think, of letting the town know, here's what we have in front of us, here's the information we have. Certainly, we've all seen Front Porch Forum, which is a indicator of how, this topic, how important this topic is. We'll ask that people use the mic, and we'll bring it around to you. And we're looking at this agenda item for an hour and a half. We're going to try to keep it to that because we have additional business afterwards. So with that, I guess, unless the board has any particular things to say, we'll open it up. Yes, you have to, go through that process. Thanks. Oh, sure, absolutely. If you have more information you want to present.
He's more prepared than I. Pretty sharp today. Which is not uncommon.
Evening. Well, first of all, we want to thank everyone for coming and listening and hearing all the options. Eric Spivak, I'm Assistant Chief and an EMT.
Dave V.S.A, I'm also an Assistant Chief on a EMR.
Chief Barber sends his regrets. He's down with the flu, but he is he is watching.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
No doubt.
Okay. I'd like to start first by asking Richmond and Charlotte a question, and this is something that is critical for everyone involved. Is when we have a structure fire, as they're aware, we're required to have an ambulance on scene, standby, in case something happens. I'd like to know from Richmond and Charlotte, if we get a structure fire in town in their response area, are they going to send an ambulance to stand by no matter how long it takes?
Can I just ask, and I'm not doubting that you guys do that, what's the requirement that,
That an ambulance be on scene in case of an injury.
where does the requirement come from?
It's OSHA, State of Vermont, and
Okay,
NFPA and so on. Because, well, I just want to make sure, because one of the things that's going to happen is if we have a fire, they're going to send an ambulance over for standby. It's going to take it out of service for other runs and other calls.
Which is what's happening
Which
now,
is
correct?
correct.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening now with St. Mike's as well, or whoever's coming over to
Okay.
cover. I'd just like to know, their commitment to that. That's
Okay.
part of the commitment that we have to be aware of for the contract.
sure. Mr. St.
Eric,
George?
per NFPA, an ambulance will be on standby for a fire.
Okay. Thank you,
If
Dick.
we're committed into your zone, we will be that ambulance. I know in structure fires in Charlotte, I commit one to the firefighters, and I usually call a second one.
Okay.
Thank you. We also would fully commit to sending an ambulance to stand by at a structure fire like we do with the other 5 towns that we serve. Occasionally, we also end up going in for mutual aid to send an ambulance for a structure fire, even though it's not our town. So we're happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
What's the context of the question? I'm a little confused. Dan Opton, just curious, what's the context of the question? I just wasn't... Is that in relation to if they were to provide us services or something?
Yes, if they were,
Okay.
if we were to contract with them, we want to make sure as part of the contract during a structure fire that we have an ambulance on scene as required by an FPA.
Okay, thanks.
Odds are our clients will be here too, so.
That's true.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I do have a,
Yeah, Greg Matthews. Just a quick question along that same line with ambulances. How about sporting events? We've been to many high school football games over the years, and a lot of times there's an ambulance parked right there through the whole game because of the contact. Do we have anything like that that happens at Seaview or any the local high schools?
Through the school, isn't it? That's not a,
right now, Hinesburg First Response stands by at the football games. We would be hoping that Richmond and Charlotte would help share those duties.
but do you do that, does Hinesburg do that because that's the right thing that Hinesburg feels that they need to do? Or the
CVU
school?
requires it. We have to have.
CVU is required to, yeah.
They do have their medical directors and their medical people there, and we stand by. If there's an injury on the field, they call us out if they need us.
Got it.
Does St. Mike's come to those?
St. Mike's has not come in the past. They have, not in the last couple of years because of their schedules, but they have in the past once or twice sent an ambulance over to stand by for the football games as available.
So I think the question to Charlotte and Richmond would be is, would you, is it a possibility? And for other events like that, what do you do now in those towns? I think that's a fair question.
Rob Mullen, Deputy Chief, Charlotte Fire and Rescue. VPA requires actually to have medical staff, medical trained staff on all high school events, and that would be covered by their first response. And if there was an ambulance to be required or to be called, if it was in our area, we would be responding. Okay. We also do provide standby events in the town of Charlotte for a charge. Okay. Yes, we've also participated in the mock crash since it's been started. We've been one of the active ambulances involved with the mock crash at CVU.
Thank you. Go ahead, did you want to?
Basically, there's two options in front of us, contract or town operated. And yes, the board could choose to do nothing, but as stated by a member last week, that's not fair to the surrounding services. Our discussions have been about ambulance service for Hinesburg, and we have to remember our contractual obligations to St. George. Now let's look at the bottom line of both options. The fire department budget for the current fiscal year 2020 is $311,940. The 2021 budget for the fire department, which includes one full-time firefighter advanced EMT, is $412,174. The Charlotte contract proposal is $53,000. The Richmond contract proposal has ranged from $35,000 to $60,000 depending on the response area. And I also understand that Richmond has stated they would consider responding to St. George, which will most likely increase their contract amount. And because the exact contract amount is unknown, I'm using $50,000 for purposes of the discussion. After adding Charlotte and Richmond contract amounts, the total fire budget is $515,174. With this budget and with the contract, there is no offsetting revenues from billings. This is an increase of $203,234, and based upon a tax rate of $63,000 per 1 cent of taxes, as per your meeting last week, that's going to be an increase of $3.22 cents on the tax rate. The fire department's proposal for a town-operated ambulance and 2 full-time weekday firefighter AMTs is $545,172. This is reduced by a very conservative estimate of $93,000 in revenues from ambulance billings. We arrived at the revenue number based on billing information provided by St. Mike's for the past 5 years. It does not include revenues other services have recognized for calls when St. Mike's was unable to respond. The net budget with a town-operated ambulance would be $452,172, which is a $140,232 increase over the current year. An increase in the tax rate of $2.22 cents. St. Mike's has been open, but they have not committed that if Hinesburg is in the process of establishing our own ambulance service, that we may, and we have to confirm this with St. Mike's, continue to receive service provided there is an end date. But again, they have not committed to that. It is a discussion we would have to have with St. Mike's. The 2 full-time firefighter AEMTs would be Monday through Friday, daytime staffing. If they are on a run and another call comes in, then available first responders would respond to the call, as we have first responders now. Night and weekend shifts would continue to be staffed by the same volunteers who currently respond. The biggest cost in starting the service is the ambulance, followed by the equipment. Aside from a stretcher and a few smaller items, we already have all the required equipment on Med 100 and in use. A new ambulance, which is approximately $250,000, is generously being donated by town residents. When the time comes for a second ambulance, there are options other than purchasing a new ambulance. As Chief Morton stated, their first backup was a used unit. It is a fact that Hinesburg is the busiest first response agency in the state. We are running as many EMS calls as some ambulance services. In 2003 and again in 2019, Hinesburg was named First Response Squad of the Year. In January 2015 EMS newsletter, the Hinesburg Fire Department was recognized by Dr. Daniel Wolfson, the State EMS Medical Director, for our proactive approach in obtaining a 12-lead AKG and our commitment to the community. A town-operated ambulance is the next logical step in our commitment to provide the best service to our community and neighbors. Merrilee is correct in her statement that we can be prepared to start operations by this summer. As soon as the budget passes with an ambulance, we will apply for the license, begin our search to purchase an ambulance, and train with area services in working on an ambulance. There are residents who have stated once we have an ambulance, they would be interested in joining the department. To help with the transition, we have members who have or are working on ambulances, and every service we work with has stated they will welcome us for ride-along so we can train on an ambulance. With regards to the delivery time of an ambulance, yes, a custom-built model can be a 9 to 10-month delivery. A factory demo can be delivered in 60 to 90 days. It's been mentioned about 5 and 10-year projections. Regardless of which way proceed, contract or ambulance, the costs of running the department and town are not going to go down. The contracts with the outside agencies will increase. Operating costs will increase based on call volume, cost of equipment, cost of supplies, and growth in town, to name a few factors. We have always tried to keep our budget increases minimal, generally keeping around 2%, which has been driven by the increase in call volume. With an ambulance, there will be revenues to help offset these costs. There's been too much negativity and talk of failure. This is not going to fail because the department members are not going to let it fail. We have worked too hard to achieve the good reputation we have within our EMS district and statewide as a successful first response agency. For those concerned about possible failure, we can do as Chief Morton stated Williston did when they started, include an out clause when we purchased the ambulance. It's time to stop putting this off and move forward. The board has already stated they're planning to schedule a bond vote on a high-profile issue for November. This is too important an issue to be delayed any longer and overshadowed in November by the other item. The taxpayers of Hinesburg have clearly stated they want the issue decided now, with many in support of a town ambulance. We respectfully request the budget put before the voters on town meeting night is the one that includes a town-operated ambulance. This is what's best for the town, what many voters want, and has the least impact on the tax rate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't know if the board wants to respond, or we can certainly let anybody else respond.
Dave, have anything to add? You good?
Yeah, like I said, he's a lot more prepared than I.
All right, we'll open it up. I mean, these are, I think, topics we've brushed upon for the last 2 weeks, but I think you've presented it in a precise manner, I think, in one packet.
There's one thing that I have been running over my mind the last week or so. That we haven't talked an awful lot about patient care. We talked about the lives saved by an ambulance getting there within, and those are pretty low numbers. And chances are, if you had a cardiac arrest, by the time somebody gets there, it's too late. The thing we do have is a couple of calls recently. One was a 93-year-old lady who fell. This lady was on the floor. A couple of us got there. We tried to pick her up. She screamed loudly. So we waited. We waited for an ambulance. So that lady waited another 10 minutes on the floor while we were waiting for an ambulance who had trained people. We had enough people, we just had the training level at that time to help her. And you don't want to move somebody. And we also had a 60-year-old woman who was injured in a horse accident. She was in a barn laying on the concrete floor. A couple weeks ago, 30 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever. I don't remember. She laid there. We don't want to move her until we have the ambulance, and we move once. 70-year-old man, same situation as the lady, on the floor, laying there until we get an ambulance there to pick him up, not wanting to move him twice. If there's any question of any injury, you don't want to move that person twice. You want to wait, move them once, and have it done, causing the least amount of possible injury or extent. That, in my estimation, is the biggest reason we need this. It's those people who are, and there's more and more, and we have those almost weekly, if not every week. That type of care is needed. So that's my biggest goal in this, is to get that kind of care for our elderly mostly, but everybody, anybody. We have car accidents, the same thing. You're sitting there, laying inside the road, waiting for an ambulance.
And those cases, that's St. Mike's we're waiting for, primarily.
It's primary, the St.
Yeah.
Mike's, it doesn't, but anybody, yeah.
And sometimes with accidents, we have 2, 3, 4 ambulances coming in. It all depends
Depending
on the crash.
call.
We discussed busiest call times last week, and being Saturdays or mid-afternoon. And I'd like to pose a question to Charlotte and Richmond, because we're all in the same boat with the call volume increase, is when is their busiest call time? Are we gonna be contracting with them for an ambulance and need it at 3 to 5 in the afternoon, which is our busiest time and could conceivably be their busiest time, and not get an ambulance because they're on other calls?
I would guess those times are everyone's busiest
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, and that would be St. Mike's busiest time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We're already in that position, is what you're saying.
I guess.
Yeah.
Did you want to add?
Chief St. George, yes, Eric, our busiest call times are daytimes, afternoons, but our turnover rate over the last year was what, 4 calls? Four calls. Two were straight EMS. Schlott is borderline on utilization of, we do 1.1 call a day without adding in Hinesburg or any other. That's our mutual aid, that's everything.
So we were also curious about this. So it turns out the 309 calls last fiscal year that St. Mike's went to, they turned over 58 of those to mutual aid, which kind of shows how busy they are. That's about 20% of calls they had to turn over to another service. So I took and combined St. Mike's data that they sent us of call times and locations and combined it with our data from last year. And there were 37 times, so about 12% of calls that we would not have been able to get to. And historically, we're able to staff a second ambulance about 35% of the time. So you'd see that go down to about 24 missed calls per year.
Nancy and I are the reason why some of us are here tonight.
You should introduce yourself, please.
I'm sorry, my name's Terry Wilson. I've listened to this. This has been going on for quite some time now. And I've seen all the statistics, the call volume, et cetera, but one of the problems I think we're missing here is the real true human element involved in this. If we have our own ambulance service, I believe that we can control our own destiny. I'm not convinced that the response times from Richmond or Charlotte or St. Mike's are that great, to be honest with you. I think if we had an in-town service, this would go a long way. And I'm not taking anything away from St. Michael's, Richmond, or Charlotte. But what I'm saying is, I think if we had it based here in town, this would go a long way. I also want to thank the Select Board and everybody else for their incredible work on this. I think this is too big of an issue to let a few people decide this. I propose that you put this to the vote for the town, put the issues out, and let the town decide what they want to do. And actually, I want to thank the fire department and the police department for their great job. And I want to go back a number of years ago. I've been here about 32 years in this town. And I remember when they were starting the police department, and there was a very similar pushback. You know, we were going to contract Shelburne, the state police, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we got our police department, and we found money in the budget for them. So anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody, and I would hope that you'd consider putting this up for vote.
Thank you. Anyone else, and particular any comments on go ahead, Mr. St. George.
I would like to say, as Chief Charlotte Fire and Rescue, we fully support Hinesburg Fire and Rescue having their own ambulance. Again, we are here as neighbors, willing to help out, be it 6 days, 6 months, 6 weeks. We're part of a mutual aid system where Hinesburg comes to Charlotte to help us on structure fires, or like last spring, our big tire fire, Eric, where you got me the water supply that we needed. We're willing to work with the town and do whatever is necessary. I do know our turnover rate on our call volume on ambulance. We are the median outlet for Chittenden County because we are the lower call volume. But it's still time from our station to the town of Hinesburg.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The budget presented last week had $25,000. I'm Carol Jenkins, sorry. The budget last week had $25,000 for ambulance lease purchase. This budget does not. So one question is, why not? And then the other question, or related question, is there's been conversation about a second ambulance. Both, I believe, Richmond and Charlotte have a second ambulance. So do you foresee that that's something that Hinesburg needs? When would it need it? And if we did get it, where would we put it? Because I think right now there's no garage space based on the list that was provided last week.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, the $25,000 was taken out because that was based on leasing an ambulance while we waited for a new one to arrive.
That was the explanation that Robert and Al gave.
Yes.
That they had included that $25,000 as a placeholder for while the ambulance was ordered for leasing. My thought before that was it was $25,000, or the suggestion was $25,000 to be put aside each year towards the purchase of the replacement ambulance in the 7 to 10 year, or 8 to 10 year.
So also putting it
range.
in for the capital.
Yeah, so
In the capital.
So when I originally started getting into the budget, I thought we had put $25,000 in there just to cover capital costs that you would, at some point, not the building, but to replace the ambulance at some point, like we would do for any other capital cost?
Because we would be able to get a demo unit within 60 to 90 days, which would put us right around the beginning of the fiscal budget, we found that we would not need set the $25,000 aside for a lease until we got a new ambulance.
Would it make sense to keep that in as a capital transfer?
Eventually, yes.
And was there one more question?
Right? And
Oh, the buildings,
with
yeah.
regards to the second ambulance, it would be driven by call volume. I mean, would we need one right away or in a year? It's doubtful. Down the road, 3, 4, 5 years, certainly could. As far as space goes, again, some call volume, but a lot of that's going to be driven by the growth in town and the number of buildings that go up. If Black Rock and Creekside get built, then we're certainly going to have to take a look at a larger building. If they don't get built out, we still have the old station. We can put the backup ambulance in there. We can put the med unit in, the current med unit in there. Engine 3 fits in there also. There's 2 bays over there that we can utilize if we need to. And the immediate plan when we do get the first ambulance is to move Med 100 up there as the backup first response vehicle for a second call, as well as a utility vehicle for flooding and that kind of thing, and that would be parked at the old station.
Hi, I'm Diane Barber. I've lived in town for 45 years, if you don't know me. I am also the chief's wife. I am also the mother of the cardiac arrest that was the big save on Halloween. I've sat through 2 meetings and haven't said a word. I have been on Front Porch Forum, and what I said, someone said they couldn't believe what I said was true. Well, I've taken notes at all of the last 2 meetings, and I want to thank publicly Richmond and Charlotte for being here and saying they would be good neighbors. I think one of them is a good neighbor, and the other one was looking at this whole adventure more as a business. That is my own opinion on this. There were 3 chiefs that were here visiting. Ken Morton was here from Williston, Terry Francis from South Burlington, and I believe Dick said the best thing for our town is for our own ambulance. If it's not today, it should be soon. I heard that the first meeting, and I heard it again last meeting. I've taken lots of notes. My big thing for me is the taxpayers' money. Val and I both have just retired. The money it's tighter than it was when we were working, which is true of all my neighbors. I have a real problem thinking that we're going to pay Charlotte $52,000 a year, even though Dick knows I love him. I have a bigger problem thinking about giving Richmond $35,000. They even, the girl last week said maybe it could be up to $60,000, depending on their service area. And then there's poor St. George. We have a contract with them for $40,000 a year. Our fire budget going to lose some of that so that we can pay Richmond to cover St. George for us on that contract? That's a worry for me. And then you add $55 membership fee to Richmond. I personally am not going to pay Richmond $55 to come to my house as my ambulance. I pay taxes in this town, and if I'm paying taxes in this town to have these 2 wonderful towns come to be my ambulance, I'm not going to pay a membership fee too. The proposal from Hinesburg, as you heard, was 1 firefighter is already in the fire budget. That person, according to the job description, and my understanding is they're going to be an EMS firefighter. Somehow there were 2 EMTs on the ambulance. My understanding is, from listening to people talk, that 1 is going to be on the ambulance, and that fire EMS person is the second ambulance person during the day also. So I think that needs to be posted. People have talked about volunteerism in the state going down. Well, in our department, 3 years ago, we had 33 members. Today, we have 55, 2 waiting in the wings, AEMTs and an EMT waiting to join our department. We were, as Eric said, we were recognized for Life-Saving Award. We were recognized twice recently, 1999, I think, and again this year for First Responders of the Year. We have training every 3-4 times a month, and Starksborough's first responders have just joined us because of the good training that happens in our town. I have concerns, a lot of concerns. One is you keep talking about paramedics and how important they are. I heard Chief Morton say, I heard Terry Francis say last week that paramedics don't have to be on our ambulance. We are not going to be a licensed paramedic service right away. And 3% of the calls I heard from people sitting here need a paramedic. My daughter could have used a paramedic maybe at the scene of the house. There wasn't one, and our responding team and a nurse EMT on the scene took care of her. The paramedic joined them at Cheese Factory Road and sat and didn't touch my daughter. They didn't need to because the care had been so good when they got there. I'm trying to be quick. If you want to see a good talk about volunteerism, you ought to go on YouTube and look up TED Talks, and Dan Batsey from the EMS office used Hinesburg as a volunteerism, and it's a really good thing. Jeff talked about the paramedics. Jeff, I just have to disagree with you on it. You also asked about a 5-year plan. I think Al tried to talk about that last week, and he says it all depends on the growth in this town. And right now, none of our boards are letting much growth happen in this town. So until they start to allow growth, which I know Tom wants to see happen to help the tax rate, we don't have to worry about a 5-year plan. I walked out of here last week and said, what other department has a 5-year plan? We have a strategic plan for the department. That kind of is a 5-year plan. So I have one last question, and it's for Richmond. I want to know how Richmond can ethically say they can give Hinesburg and St. George citizens that are paying for this service the coverage they need when they are contracted with now Bolton, Huntington, Richmond, Jericho, and Underhill. They're trying to contract with parts of Starksborough, and they're going to add St. George and Hinesburg to that. That's 8 towns. So when we need an ambulance, they're going to be some other place, and we're going to end up having mutual aid come, and we're paying for their service of upwards about $50,000. So you add what they have to what Charlotte wants, and I end up with about $97,000 plus the $55 membership fee for household that Richmond covers. I look at the budget that my husband and the officers at Hinesburg have figured out, and it's $132,998. And then you get revenue back in our town from our townspeople's insurance. We won't see that for Charlotte and Richmond. It'll be their money and their revenue. I think you need to put on the ballot for March. It's time to vote this onto the ballot. And with that, I would like to give the board my petition signed by 282 Hinesburg residents. Some of them couldn't be here. Some of them are elderly at Kelly Fields, that when some of our firefighters went over there the other night and asked if they would support the ambulance going on the warning, they said, "What do you mean we're not getting an ambulance when St. Mike's leaves?" They thought we were. David and I stood at Lampman's, took signatures from 8 to 9:30, and then again 11 to 12:30, and then I was alone from 4:30 to 6. people said to me, of course I'll sign. Why aren't we getting an ambulance? So and there are people that don't want us to have an ambulance right now or think they need more information. But there are a lot of people out there watching the select board meetings and what's going on in this town. So I have 282. I tried to put this in so people in the audience know this morning because I thought if it went in before the warning comes out tonight that they haven't approved yet, that maybe they would put it on the Monday night ballot or vote at town meeting. Missy said she couldn't take it because there's 40 days needed before town meeting.
I can explain that.
Okay.
So if you want to bring that up. Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
The rules around this, just so everybody knows, there's sort of, thank you. So there's, and I don't pretend to know all these rules, so I'm always can be corrected. But anybody in town can petition to put something on the warning in March, or really at any time to some extent, and it needs to be done within 40 days and 5% of the voters. So we're past the 40 days, so unfortunately, in this case, it's too late. Otherwise, because it's a petition, and if it gets authorized that, sure enough, you have 5% or more of the voters, it would have been put on to the March ballot.
Can I just speak to that too?
I'll continue, and then you can. But as far as the warning for the actual town meeting, the select board does that, and it has to be posted 30 to 40 days. So there's a little bit of a range there. It can't be too early, it can't be too late. And so we still have, 3 days or something to complete. We've got a draft warning. We still have a few days, which we plan to do today. It's an item on our agenda to finalize the warning. So in this case, I think this is for the board to take under consideration that you would like to see this item warned in the March vote.
Can I just speak to something though?
Oh, yeah. So I'll just read the wording that you had on there. Ambulance petition, we the undersigned legal voters of the town of Hinesburg hereby petition the select board to add the following article to the warning for the Hinesburg annual meeting to be held on March 3rd. So this would be not by Australian ballot, but you're asking that it be at March, so that would be March 2nd, the annual meeting. I'll correct that for you. Article, shall the town of Hinesburg vote to raise and appropriate and expend the sum of $132,998 for the support of a town ambulance to provide service to the residents of the town?
And I needed to have 5% of the registered voters, and there was 4,000, which means I needed 200 signatures, which we got in 24 hours. But the reason I want to tell you why I did that petition, this did not come from the department, it came from me. And I went to them and said, okay, now I'm ticked. And I was ticked because I left the meeting last week feeling so good about the first 2 meetings. And then I got home and I turned on the TV and there was my select board. And they were talking about the warnings for the town meeting. And I felt defeated, I felt angry. I didn't feel that you were talking about putting on a warning for what if, how are we gonna write a warning for, are we gonna put the budget on the ambulance? Are we gonna put on the contract? You each said your piece, which some with really rubbed me the wrong way, not because you disagree with me, but because of the wording of your words. And I felt it was really inappropriate for you to continue that conversation for almost 22 minutes with no one in this audience that was here for the ambulance talk. And if you were gonna talk about that as a warning, I really felt it should have happened in the regular meeting. So I pounded out, and my daughter helped me get the information from the Secretary of State, and that's where that came from. And I'll tell you, our fire department and rescue people went door to door in the last 24 hours, and the majority of people said, of course I'll sign that. And yes, we had a few people that said, I need a little more information. But that's why that petition was started. It wasn't because they feel so strongly. It was because I'll be honest, I was appalled at some of the comments my select board made about how to go about this. So,
Okay.
thank you.
And certainly if anybody wants to, all of those meetings are on VCAM, and everybody's invited to go ahead and see for yourself, the discussion that happened, I guess. Just go, so I want to see if anybody else wants to speak. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
I am Katie Charbonneau, for those of you that don't know me. I am the cardiac arrest survivor that everyone knows about. Thank you. You should be applauding all of them, though. I've kept my mouth quiet, too, for the past 2 meetings, and today is the day to talk. I hear over and over again about paramedics. As my mom said, I didn't need one. Why? Because the level of care that our EMS services gave me, I did not need one. My husband, who's an EMR, did 7 minutes of CPR on me until they got to my house. Once they got to my house, it was 40 minutes of CPR and 8 shocks with an AED, and I was back as the paramedic was getting on the ambulance. They keep saying 2% of calls, 2% of calls. That's great. Yeah, some people probably do need that. But I was dead multiple times, and I am still here. I'm standing here, and I am healthy and happy and raising money for AEDs and teaching everybody CPR. The other thing that I want to talk about is response times. We keep hearing response times don't matter. I assure you that to your families, the response time matters. St. Mike's was here for my call, and they were very fast. But because of our EMTs, I am still here. If you think that they don't matter, ask my husband, ask my parents, ask my children who were sitting in my house as they were hearing the shocks from the AED. Ask our first responders. 19 of them were there with me. 19 of them saved my life. So don't ever say that they're not capable of doing this job, because they are more capable than anybody else could be.
I'm Lynn Porter. For the purpose of transparency, I am an EMT. I do volunteer with Hinesburg. I do not live in the town of Hinesburg. I live in Williston. One of the reasons that I volunteer with the town of Hinesburg is because of the quality of the department. It provides me a wonderful outlet for training and maintaining my ability to help. But I work in Williston, I work in a school, and I work with people that come from all of these towns we're talking about. And they've seen a lot of things on Front Porch Forum all over the place. And I've had people come to me because they know that I run with Hinesburg. And there are people coming from some of these other towns saying, what do you mean they're going to be providing a service for Hinesburg? What if I need them? What if I have a problem in my home in Charlotte and Charlotte is responding to Hinesburg? My answer is we have a mutual aid system. It would be no different. However, the people in Charlotte that have asked these questions said, we pay for our service. We have chosen to have a budget to support our ambulance. I don't want to have to wait for 2 or 3 backup ambulances to get there when out of my taxes, I pay for the service in my town. So I'm hearing this in my place of employment. I'm not saying this from the part of saying Hinesburg needs to have an ambulance. I'm saying I value my time running with Hinesburg, but these conversations are happening outside of this building.
Thank you. Has anybody not asked a question in the back there? Yeah? Doesn't matter.
Nancy Annisfield, been in Hinesburg for 32 years, and I just kind of want to put one last spin on some of these really important comments that we've been hearing. We started the meeting talking a little bit about financial differences between contracting or owning our own. And we talked about response times and how infrequently the response time would have a bearing on what would happen. But my question to anybody who is opposing Hinesburg owning their own ambulance is, what exactly is your price in time and dollars on the life difference that it would make if the ambulance were here in town as opposed to waiting for somebody else? And I don't see how this town can put a price tag of, if it's another $20,000 or $30,000 a year, do you want that to be your life that made that price tag difference? Or the 10 minutes or 12 minutes versus the 5 or 6? That's all.
Hi folks, my name is Miles Lamberson. I'm president of Richmond Rescue. I'm an EMT. I grew up in Hinesburg. I was on Hinesburg First Response at one point. I now live in Richmond. My parents live in the south of Hinesburg down on Silver Street. I appreciate everyone being here. I realize it's a really emotional issue, and it's something that kind of hits us all viscerally. So I don't fault anyone for feeling strong emotions about this. I wanted to just address a few things about the Richmond proposal. What we're proposing is, I want to reiterate, to help out our neighbors. We're willing to do this, like Charlotte has said, for any amount of time that could be. Could be a long time, or it could be just until an ambulance is here in Hinesburg. The reason that we have to charge that $10 per capita fee is because taking on more patients, taking on more calls, puts additional wear on our trucks. It puts additional wear on our equipment. That's why we have to charge. We're asking $10 per person per capita for the service area that we serve. To address the subscription fee, and I just want to provide some clarity because I feel that it's been a little bit misunderstood. What we have is a program where we charge, a family can pay $50 per year. If they pay $50 per year, what that means is we will bill their insurance, but we won't bill them at all after that. So their insurance will pay whatever they do. That could be zero. And then we don't bill them. Additionally, we're not going to take anyone to collections. We don't do that. But the idea, and I just want to clarify this with the subscription, it's not some maniacal plan where we squeeze money out of people. I really see this as a way, as an insurance policy for somebody to say, you know what, I might need an ambulance this year. I can't pay out of pocket for that. I don't want to pay out of pocket for that. And I'm going to support my local ambulance for $50 per year. And if I do require an ambulance, I'm not going to be charged additionally. This is not something that everybody is charged, and I want to just paint that that's in contrast to the town paying, or the taxpayers paying that per capita amount, and then every patient being billed the ambulance bill in full. That's the basis of the subscription. It is worth it for the service. We feel that works for our community, and that's why we do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question on that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
One clarification. The $55, is that required or optional?
Completely optional.
Okay.
Completely optional.
I just want to make sure.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ryan. You may have seen some posts of mine on Front Porch Forum. And I just want to say it's a lot easier to type than to stand up in front of people. So just realize that if there is a vote, if this is brought to the public, I beg the select board to do it on the Tuesday as a ballot item. That in addition to the difficulty of standing up and raising concerns about our friends and neighbors and wonderful first responders, more people can come to a vote that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and you can get an absentee ballot. So that's just one thing I think is extremely important. I was an EMT a very long time ago. and I was a crew chief for my night. It was volunteer. And I just want to mention a couple things. One is response time. And people are saying how important that is, response time. The people that want an ambulance here in Hinesburg. And in fact, Chief Barber specifically mentioned one call to me recently on Swamp Road, and he complained how long it took Richmond Rescue to get there. Okay? Well, the actual dispatch data shows that they got there faster than our first responders. And this was a specific call that Chief Barber brought to my attention. I didn't even go out seeking one. And our first responders took longer to get there than Richmond Rescue. We have the dispatch information. And one of the issues is that at night, our first responders are at home. So when you look at the distance from our station to a scene, you need to also factor in our first responders being at home, getting woken up, getting dressed, going to pee, scraping the ice off their windshield, driving to the station, and then waiting for the second person to do all those steps and get to the station and then respond. Richmond Rescue is in the building 24 hours a day, ready to go. And I think that's important. And it's fine to say how important response time is, but in that case, if that's the main thing that we're hitching our wagon to, I want to see data from dispatch showing exactly how long it has taken each time. Because in this one specific case, it's just one example, but it actually took our first responders longer. It was at midnight, so that's probably why. The second thing is, so we talk about response time, but who is getting there? We have wonderful people, I don't doubt that. But sometimes a paramedic is necessary. I am so happy that you survived cardiac arrest. That's just amazing, and it's fabulous. And it's fabulous that in your case, you didn't need the paramedic. But in many, many cases, you do. And the paramedic can do so much more. The paramedics can do almost everything that you can do at the ER. So it's like they're coming to you. And then it's almost like you're already in the ER. Not everything, but most things. When I was an EMT, I was an EMT in Ocean City, New Jersey, a pretty big place. And our mayor had a cardiac arrest. And I was doing CPR. And we were trying to squeeze the airbag and get air into him, and it wasn't going in. And he died. And we didn't have a paramedic. And he probably wouldn't have died if we had a paramedic, because they can intubate. They can put a tube down the throat all the way into the lungs, and you can get air in. And there was something weird with his throat. We couldn't get the air in, and he died. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. We wouldn't, here in Hinesburg, we would not have a paramedic. Richmond Rescue would have a paramedic 60% of the time. And 60% is better than 0, okay? Sorry, this is hard getting up in front of people and speaking. If something's on the budget, Chief Barber's revised budget, it has to be finalized like within the next few days, whether we're voting on it Monday night or Tuesday. And Chief Barber sent out a revised budget a few days ago, which was totally different than what was presented 1 week ago. And that concerns me, that it keeps changing. And also there were a lot of things that were left off of that budget from what was presented 1 week ago today with the help of, I'm blanking on the guy's name, Zeke. Zeke's very experienced. He works for Burlington Fire Rescue, and he helped prepare all this information. And then Chief Barber's revised budget left a lot of things out. And I asked him about a lot of stuff. It's hard to nail some things down. But one thing was, he said that $25,000 I mentioned, Lisa, that was for replacement cost to recoup the money. That in I don't know how many years it's going to be. In 10 years, when we need a new ambulance, what are you going to do when we suddenly need $250,000 if you haven't been putting replacement costs into the budget? And he took it out. Zeke suggested buying another manual and automatic defibrillator. That's like $25,000. And then she said, well, we have one, and that's all we need. And I said, well, then why did Zeke say we should get another one? And he's like, oh, Zeke didn't know ours was new. And there were a lot of things that were missing from that budget that were on the one that was presented 1 week ago to the select board. Even things like insurance for the ambulance. I mean, we all pay a lot of money for our car insurance, right? That's not nothing. And I said, well, you know, obviously an ambulance costs more than that. Where's the car insurance? Not the car insurance, you know, the insurance for the vehicle. And he says, well, we don't have a VIN number. Nobody will give me an estimate. Nobody will give me an amount. And I'm like, well, can't you guess? I mean, we have to put this in the budget. And he's like, well, if we go over, you know, it's no big deal. So we'll make a new budget the next year and we'll adjust it. And there's just so much that was left off from, if you compare Zeke's budget to what the chief presented, it's very different. And a lot of things are left out. And even things like medical supplies, you know, all the Band-Aids and bandages, and it's the same as last year on the chief's budget. I said, well, don't you think you're gonna use more of that if you're transporting someone all the way to the hospital? And the last thing I'll just say is experience. Obviously, experience is important. A lot of our folks are very experienced. You've been on lots of calls, been on the rescue squad for years. But it's different to be in an ambulance. It's not just, oh, well, it's just the driving them there part. It's not. There's a lot. I mean, what do you do when someone starts projectile vomiting in the back of the ambulance? What do you do when a pregnant woman has a baby and they both need help and they have 2 patients and you're all by yourself? What do you do when they start unbuckling themselves and demanding that you pull over on 116 and let them out? I mean, it's just on and on. It's not just a taxi service. And so there's a lot of experience that our first responders don't have because it's in the ambulance part. And that's important. And they can ride with other ambulance squads, but we only have a few months, you know, now until St. Mike's goes away. And we only have one call, less than one call a day on average. And so my concern is you're not going to get the experience either, because with less than one call a day, all the experience you get for running in an ambulance. And I think that's probably it. Okay.
Yeah, you want me to explain it or you want to? I was going to bring it up again.
Greg Matthews again. I'm going to go talking about money, but first I want to ask, is that petition closed or can people that haven't signed it still sign it?
I think it's closed. It's here. It's been presented.
Okay.
And it
That
has a
answers
number
that
of
question.
signatures.
You didn't come to my house, Diane. I'm hurt. But,
Would you face the board? And
Yeah.
because that's who you're talking to.
okay, mainly for their proposal. You guys will go after, you're going to have a collection agency. That's already been decided. You're going to have somebody else collect the money if we have our own ambulance service. And you're going to go after the insurance. What's your policy going to be about the money that the insurance don't pay? How are you going to collect it? Are you going to offer that $50 scholarship per family so we don't have to worry about getting a bill 4 or 5 months down the road for money that the insurance didn't pay, even though we are, as taxpayers, paying for the ambulance service? How are you going to address that?
We haven't discussed that as a group of officers. It's, quite honest, it's not a bad idea. We have several people that we go to repeatedly, and most of them are covered by their Medicare, so that's what you're going to get, but it certainly is a option that could be done. If a family wanted to give $50 or whatever, and any additional billing would be forgiven. Don't know. We haven't talked about it.
Just out of curiosity, Richmond, how many other ambulance services do you know that do that? Because it is an interesting policy.
Freeman's in the area, Essex does it. They cover 5 towns.
Okay, so Shelburne, okay. All right. So it sounds like a number of them do it. Go ahead.
Addressing a few things.
Yeah.
First of all, on the billing, one of the things we discussed is, you know, we'd have an outside agent billing company. They would bill the insurance carriers and so on. And I believe what St. Mike's does now is they'll have 1 or 2 statements sent to the insured for whatever is left. If it's paid, fantastic. If it's not, that's as far as it goes. There's no collection agencies, there's no attorneys. We're not going to take your car or your house or anything. And that is the way things are leaning. But again, that's just general discussion. I do want to respond to a few things to Kathy. Yep.
So a decision like that is made at the fire department level, at the select board level? Does the town vote that we're going to do the 50 thing? How does that work? Maybe I would ask the other towns to answer.
My thought would be, it would be a decision by the officers and the select board, because it is the town that's, you know, it is the town that's going to be receiving the benefit of the money. So it would have to be a discussion between both parties, exactly what we decided to do. And it would, and again, if we're contracting out, the select board's going to be involved because of the contract anyways.
And I think the original proposal would be a proposal of have a board that would oversee the operations of the ambulance, you know, in that structure. And I would guess they would suggest policies, and it would come to the board to.
It would be the select board would make the final decision on the collection policy. Okay. With regards to response times, we have, and we have to report this annually to the state, our average response time is 7 minutes to the scene. Now that's a jumper getting on scene, whether they're going from the station or from the house. At night, there are 2, sometimes 3 members on duty for EMS calls. Just about every night of the week, one of the members that's on duty is within a quarter-mile radius of the station. Yes, we're getting out of bed. So is an ambulance service. The only difference is they get out of bed, get in the ambulance, we get out of bed, get in our car, come down. On average, we are on scene with a jumper in 7 minutes. That's not going to change if we have an ambulance. What will change is daytime, because someone will be at the station to jump in. Nighttime, weekends, it's still going to be someone coming down the station, rolling the rig, with the other jumpers going directly to the scene.
You're not going to wait for that second person to get to the station to run an ambulance. The driver is going to get there, proceed to the scene, and the additional people will meet them there.
From their house.
As we're doing right now.
Yeah, we're not going to change nights and weekends how we're responding. The 12 lead was taken out because we have a 12 lead that is about 3 years old. And I believe it can have close to a 7 to 10 year life, obviously depending on the advancement in technology and what's required and so on. And
Maybe you just explain what you're talking about.
The 12 lead is the EKG, which will take the heart rhythms, transmit it to the hospital. We have had one since 2015. This is our second one. We had to upgrade within the last year or 2 because of the technology at the hospital that we were transmitting to. The first one was fundraised from the association. The second one, I believe, the association purchased. We do have in the budget, we do have a 3-year warranty contract on it, which I think it comes up next year or the year after. They come in annually and service it. If we have a problem with it, we call, and within 24 hours, maybe 48, somebody is at our station to service it. And if they have to take it back, then they leave us a loaner.
So, just in addition to the ambulance, that 12 lead would be another item to put in the capital budget.
It's something to consider. I mean, obviously, it's a lot cheaper than, and you know, it's like all technology, the pricing is all over the place.
Yeah.
As far as the budget goes, a comment was made last week about the budget, and it was a little bit confusing. What was done with the budget that was represented was simplified. it was broken down into two lists. One list is our current budget with all, as it is now, with all the current information that we currently use, whether it's medical supplies and equipment, and so on. I know you're trying to get that up. The second page that was presented is the items that are ambulance specific. And the, okay. And the cost of, the additional cost of the ambulance. The $412,000 is the budget that's going in. With the communication dispatch and so on. What we are asking is for the additional 133 for the ambulance. All we did was simplify the budget because a couple of people last week mentioned it was a bit confusing. Nothing was left. The $25,000 was taken out for the lease of an ambulance. I don't think we've really looked at adding to the capital plan for the projected cost of a new ambulance, or a couple of the pieces of equipment that are expensive that may need to be factored into the capital budget. I don't believe we've figured those in yet.
And one full-time person down to two.
Yeah, and we changed the ambulance. The initial budget had a full-time firefighter and 2 full-time firefighter EMTs, and we reduced it to 1 firefighter regardless. And then if we go with an ambulance, a firefighter AEMT. A firefighter, as long as they are certified in CPR, can drive the ambulance.
Both of those people.
Are there
Yeah.
any, go ahead, Val.
I'm still confused because that budget didn't have you showing up there right now. And then the other budget says proposed Hinesburg fire ambulance budget. It says proposed for FY '21. Those are some of those numbers are FY '20, not '21 proposals going from the budget sheet the board's been working off of all along. So the numbers aren't making sense to me.
On what's shown right now.
Not that one, the proposed Hinesburg fire ambulance budget
The other page.
that Al did, or the fire department did. I'm not sure who.
I do know that there are some items in the budget that we,
I had it there a second ago. No, it's not in there.
While you're looking for it, yeah, while you're looking for it, you know, when we, and I wasn't primarily me, but while we were working on what this budget would be, I mean, we had Zeke, Renee, and Al, and we realized that today it's all fire, emergency response. And we said, so it was difficult to just add the ambulance because there's a lot of overlap. So we tried hard to say, well, where is that overlap? And in that budget, we sort of said, well, that's already in the fire, and that isn't, or that needs to be increased. So we did spend quite a bit of time looking at that budget, the one from 2 weeks ago, last week, and really tried to understand what would be the additional costs. And at that point, we had pretty good agreement that, yeah, this looks pretty good. And I stood up here a week ago, and when we talked about budgets, and I said, for one, this town does a really good job with their budgets. You know, and occasionally things, 1 or 2 things, but we pretty much got it down. And I said, because we take time and we all get together and work through it. And I said, this budget, we have to realize, you know, the first go-around is, it will need to be a little flexible. You can't really nail it to the penny because you don't really have experience and things will come up. So you're asking some questions between the 2 budgets.
For example, the one you just had up, Renee?
Yeah.
Capital transfer, the 98,429.
Yeah. So that's not accurate. It's missing for the SCBA's.
Yeah,
So I did
there's
mention.
about $50,000 $50,000 difference from what I picked up, what was taken from the FY20 budget rather than the proposed FY21 budget.
So if you look at the overall town budget and moved down to the fire, just bear with me, there's a lot of things in this packet.
That'll show the capital transfer.
Yep, it'll show the capital transfer.
Which
So
I-
the 98,000 is for the rescue pumper, and then the additional, I think it's what, 14 or 16,000 is the
15,000 for the
SCBA.
SCBA's.
So here's the fire budget. Capital transfers, 114,732 for FY21, and that is comprised of, on the capital transfer summary, which our Wi-Fi is rather slow in here, so.
I'm not so much questioning what the numbers are, I'm just saying this is not an accurate representation.
Right, it looks like there's some things that are missed on there.
So if people are looking at this and saying, this is what it's gonna cost, add that to this, it's not correct. It's about $50,000 or so short.
Yeah, I think there's some figures on there that have to be. What's that?
Isn't that being paid off next year,
Which one?
the 15, for the SCBA's?
The SCBA's
I
is,
think that was a 5-year thing.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's the rescue pumper that will be paid off
Right.
after.
But Al was here saying, it's about 100,000 for the fire vehicle that we're paying for capital each year, and then just as the one we have now gets paid, the expectation there may be a need for another follow-on vehicle, and the hope was, and I think Al expressed, to try to keep that level. And then I would say, okay, that's good, but if we do go with with an ambulance, we really do need to add that capital in there, and so we just want to make sure we cover it all. I don't think it would be a lot, but it would be some, anyways. Are there any more questions? So I'm just looking at the time, and we've got a little time. Roger?
I'm Roger Giroux. I was the guy that commented about the Muppets last week. I guess they decided to make me Kermit today. I think there's a third option that the town hasn't considered. And for full disclosure of all the options before anybody decides on it, I would like to state one. First off, I have 2 sons that are EMT firefighters in this town. I used to be on the rescue squad in my youth as well, and I happen to be the town doctor. The fire department are the heroes of this town. Just wait for any storm, and you'll see them out there clearing your driveways of a tree to get you to work. We all support the fire department. But there's a bunch of people in town, I'm one of them, that are frugal, and we don't like to spend tax money if we don't need to, especially since we might be paying for a new sewer system or something else all the time. And I'd like to clarify something about Mr. Estes' comments earlier. HIPAA violations happened throughout this meeting tonight. We are likely going to be at risk of getting $15,000 per comment fines from the federal government if you talk about calls to anybody. When somebody goes down, it's not to be talked about, period. Our department should get a little more professional about just talking about calls they've been on, because it's real business when your name's in the paper and you're fined $500,000. About response times is the time till the first member gets to the scene, not the time. That's what saves lives. When the defibrillator arrives, when the CPR person arrives, not when the ambulance arrives in the sidewalk or in the driveway. And we've heard from each department. Hinesburg says their average response time 7 minutes. I believe Charlotte said theirs was 8 to the town of Hinesburg. And Richmond, I can't remember if it was 10, if I remember right. That was St. Mike's. You were 16? Good to know. Charlotte was what?
Charlotte's about the same.
I think Charlotte can speak for themselves. Average response time to Hinesburg, you quoted it last time.
From the station to the fire station was 10 to 12 minutes. By Google Maps.
At code 3?
No, that's Google Maps.
That's,
Response time,
I thought you got us numbers that were 8.
We had 8 originally, but we just Google mapped it just to be conservative.
So here's a proposal that I came up with. First, let me explain that at a town meeting, I don't know, 10 years ago, federal government was, after 9/11, was paying for police officers. They would pay for the first 2 years. If the town agreed to keep them for another year or two, I forget the details, and we got a couple.
That was the state of Branson and also is available for
When those came up, the select board at the time told the townspeople we're keeping them on because we need them as rescuers during the daytime. So those extra police officers continue to be on our books. And I'm not sure they need to be there. If you look at the town newspaper every month and look at the police log, you realize there's not a lot of stuff going on in Hinesburg that we need multiple full-time positions for.
partial log.
It's a what?
Partial was published.
Okay.
It's my understanding. I mean, we'll let Chief Cambridge speak for himself, but I don't think he publishes every single thing that goes on.
But go ahead, Roger.
So here's my proposal. Let me get to where I left off here. So, and everyone who's on the rescue squad in this town knows that the police officers in town are supposed to be our daytime rescuers, and Chief Barber has told us they don't do it. Their heart's not in it. They just don't want to. Whatever the reason is, they tend to kind of slow respond and stand back and wait. Let somebody else do it. They're not really eager to be our rescuers. So this is what I propose. We remind the police department of their job description to be our daytime rescuers and give them a number of months to get up to EMTA level. Those who don't want to and want to take a job someplace else, we replace them with an EMTA or better and train them to be a police officer. Now we've got somebody who's eager, and we should hire somebody who's been a professional EMT in a city, say, who can do any trick in the book and be eager to be a rescuer, not someone who's limping by with basic skills. And we let them take charge of the rescue squad. These professional people like we saw in Charlotte and Richmond, Essex, who just impress the crap out of us when they speak. And we do that. So now our daytime is covered with the same money that we were spending on the police department, and we're getting free rescue squad members because they were already being paid to do that, but are not. So now we don't have any new hires. Since our rescuers would be during the daytime at the station, and the station is 100 feet from the fire department, move their med vehicle into one of those 3 heated bays at the police department that are kept open. For those who don't know, they're called Sally Port. Sally Port is a place that when you bring in a prisoner, you can close the garage door, and when you take him out of the car, he can't run for it. I don't imagine we need 3 Sally Ports at the same time in our town. We're not pulling in criminals like that. So now we have a place for a rescue vehicle and the staff for no money. We now opened up a slot in our fire department for that vehicle that they want to expand to someday, a ladder truck or whatever, with no need for a new fire station, which Al says we're going to need a new fire station. We don't. Our rescue vehicle just made room. So there's a third option, and that is to make our police department better, make our rescue squad better. In fact, at night, when our police department is staffed, they drive our rescue truck. None of our rescuers have to go unlock the station, even at night. The police bring it directly, and our members can go from their house to the scene, shortening our response time even further than it is now. And that's how you save lives with a true first response. Respond from your house, boom, you're there. I've saved so many lives by being first on the scene in my day that if I had to go to the station and get a vehicle and then go, they would have been dead. For no real money here, guys. It's a free thing. Just wanted you guys to consider it.
Okay, thank you. So, hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'll give it.
So my name's Michelle Franklin. I live in St. George. I am the one paramedic that's on Hinesburg First Response. I work full-time for Waterbury Ambulance, and I work per diem for Berrytown Ambulance. Let me speak to paramedicine first. Paramedicine is a very difficult profession. It's very hard to get there. It's a lot of schooling, a lot of education, a lot of practice. With 200-300 calls a year, it's very difficult to keep up on your skills because yes, I can intubate, I can sync cardiovert your heart into a regular rhythm, I can pace your heart so that it doesn't stop, I can give a boatload of medications. I can give medications for pain, I can give medications for irregular heart rhythms. I can tell you, I've been a paramedic for 1.5 years. I haven't given half of that stuff. I work as an A in Waterbury, but I work as a paramedic for Berrytown. I haven't used half of my skills there, and they did 4,000 calls last year. You're gonna be hard pressed to find a paramedic who's going to want to work for a service full time that they're not going to be able to use their skills and keep them up. On the subject of intubation, that seems to be a pretty big thing. That airway management, that intubation, airway management is on the very top of that algorithm. Intubation is on the very bottom. You're going to ventilate for your patient with a bag valve mask initially. And then you're going to use your advanced EMTs to use a supraglottic airway. That, I'm sure, is what they used on Katie. That is one of the things that saved her life. That is why the paramedic didn't do anything in the back of that ambulance. So paramedics are great. I love being a paramedic, but we aren't going to use our skills on every call. So paramedics are not necessary on every call. If you need one, and you can get one from Charlotte, you can get one from Richmond, you can get one from wherever the comm center is going to send you one from. And you meet them on the way, and you continue to do everything that you're trained to do in the meantime, which is what they did with Katie. So the other thing I want to talk about is a transporting agency versus a first response agency. Everybody in this room that is trained at the EMR, EMT, AEMT, and paramedic level have learned to assess, reassess. Those skills don't change in the back of an ambulance. The only things that are going to change in the back of an ambulance is having to talk to the hospital, having to drive to the hospital. Those things are very easily taught, and they come from experience, which I'm sure, as everybody mentioned, the other services in the area are willing to help out with. I work for 2 transporting agencies, and I'm willing to help out with that training as well. So they have the resources to train. It's not going to take very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Paul?
Try to be brief, and I acknowledge the difficulty some people have speaking in front. I'm too comfortable, so I'll try not to go too long. Why I'm not ready to support the ambulance proposal yet, and I really want to clarify yet, is I've often been confused, and I don't think I'm the only one, with the current status between the nonprofit 501c3 Firemen's Association and the town fire department. Adding an ambulance into that mix only lengthens and codifies that confusion going forward. We have 2 examples bordering each of our towns on each side here that are standalone 501c3s. And when we go to compare apples to apples in the future, I wish the town, rescue, fire, however it's configured, were its own standalone 501c3. And in fact, the org chart that was proposed last week with a citizens advisory board or something like that, I wish those were the trustees of a 501c3 called Hinesburg Fire and Rescue, where we could compare easily to Charlotte, which is, I understand Charlotte is pure fire rescue 501c3. Richmond's a little bit of a hybrid where rescue's 501c3, fire might be a town department, right? So not as easy to compare. Totally on board to support once the organizational structure is sorted out. And as we listen to these numbers that are bandied about tonight, clearly there's a lot of work to do, and I don't feel educated on what's really in front of me. The other thing I would hope to be considered is there's already one staff person in the FY21 budget for the fire department. I get it for that daytime coverage. What a wonderful opportunity to go out there and test the labor market with the consequence of one person. I was on the ambulance committee. I regret that it was dissolved because I thought we were making some good work. And one thing we heard was it's a tight labor market out there. And I'm reminded of a small town, low call volume. I can't help but think that we'll see a lot of turnover in that position and that it might be the person's first job as they ladder up to other career opportunities or their last job as they go into retirement. And I think we could work on making that more attractive, strengthen the organization chart, strengthen the organizational structure, and I'll support it wholeheartedly when that comes about, but not yet.
Yeah, wait 1 second, Chuck, or Carl, go ahead.
Back to Dr. Giro, we are planning to apply for a SAFER grant when the time comes. Okay. With regards to PD, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the agreement with PD when this all started is, yes, they would become certified, they would respond daytime as available. If they're busy on a police matter, they are not available to respond. If they're, and there they go now.
There they go, yeah.
If they're in the middle of a domestic or in the middle of a crash scene or a break-in, they cannot break away to respond to a medical call. They are there as available. Fortunately, they've been reasonably available to respond to calls.
And it's my understanding if they respond as a medical person, they're the person of record, and then they can't be there.
Correct.
They don't have the ability to be there as a police officer.
If they're the only ones there and they are providing care, they cannot leave if another matter comes in.
Or swap roles.
Correct.
Per se.
Once another medical person comes in, that's another matter. But if they are by themselves, they cannot leave until that ambulance arrives and patient care is transferred. So if they're on a scene of a medical call and there's a domestic abuse going on,
or even just
or
accident.
a fight,
Yeah.
or something, they cannot break away for that.
Okay. Carl? Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Meg Handler. I am very much a totally uneducated, ordinary citizen. I know nothing about healthcare, and I feel like this conversation is in the weeds of the details and the budget, and what you're talking about doing is putting this in front of voters like me who know nothing about this area. And I'd like to kind of zoom out for a minute and just appreciate that what you're talking about doing is essentially setting up a healthcare delivery program or system or business, for that matter, from scratch. And that is a super complicated thing that anyone who's gone to the UVM Medical Center, it's hard for them to get it right. And I'm really concerned about the timeline of trying to create a healthcare delivery system so quickly. Like, this is huge. There's liability issues. There's ethical issues of delivering really high quality care to people who are in the worst moment of their life. I just think you have to take time to really evaluate, like, how do we do this? And we have two expert professional organizations that have stepped up to fill the gap while we muddle around and figure out what would be the best solution. And I think it's really important to take it super seriously. And I don't think you can work quickly to make this happen. And I don't think you can put a simple question in front of people like me that have no idea. I mean, how can we evaluate whether this is a good idea? I have no idea if this is a good idea. I think you need some kind of committee made up of people who really understand the complexities of these issues. People like Roger who are here in this town and have actual expertise, or all of the various other people who have stepped up and talked about their own experiences. But you can't put a question like this in front of voters who don't know anything about what's going on and expect to create a meaningful, important healthcare delivery system from scratch like that. So I think you should form a committee. I think you should use the expertise that has very graciously offered their services and, like, slow down and take time to do this the right way, or decide to stick with, you know, a different system. So that's all.
Thank you.
Once the select board decides on what they're going to do, we are going to be holding public meetings to educate the public, and we are probably about a year from going into service.
Okay. Go ahead, Carl.
My name's Carl Bowen, and this is kind of an emotional topic that we've been discussing, and I just want to say I have the utmost respect and admiration for Al and everyone in the fire department and the responders, and I'm sorry Al's actually out ill. I've watched the video of the last two meetings, the 15th to 22nd. I have not been able to read every document, partly because I think they've changed. I'm not sure which one to read to get the latest. There's some good ideas that have been presented for us having an ambulance, and there's been some really good ideas for us going contracting. And I think every week has answered some questions. I know what an EMT is now, and I had no idea what it was before. But there's also other questions. So I just want to share some general comments that I hope the select board, and I got a hats off to the select board for trying to do this. I'm sure Al has told you years ago and others here we should do it, but to me it doesn't matter that we're late in some people's eyes. We're getting engaged now. I'm not sure we can make a decision in 30 days, which is town meeting. And just so I don't forget, whatever you do, I feel it has to be Australian ballot in terms of whether we go forward or not. And I'm very concerned that this could be a divisive issue for the fire department or against the fire department. And I don't think that's what it is. I think it's trying to decide how we go forward. And one of these options gives us flexibility, and one of them, once we go down it, we really can't turn back. And I think you know which is which, and I don't know which is better, but in the short term, I think we want flexibility. That would be my view right now based on what I know from the documents and the meetings. And I think it's a little strange that almost every argument for us going to our own ambulance tells me, why were we doing this with St. Mike's? I mean, the response time, knowing the person in the ambulance, care, it's just something we need to talk about and figure out. And I feel we need more time and maybe what the plan is between now and town meeting will give us the information to make a good decision and one we can live with. But I'm a budget person. And whatever our town growth is or isn't going to be, I think we need different budgets. Here's our budget assuming no growth. Here's our budget assuming this amount of growth. And how that impacts, I don't think we should look at this as a one-year cost, what we vote on at town meeting. I think it needs to be 5 to 10 years out. And all the assumptions should be made clear to us as a voter. And as for the select board, what are we all talking about? Then we can make a decision, well, the growth isn't going to happen for 3 years because we don't have our well yet, or whatever the issues are that are stymieing our growth. So I guess that's, I just hope we can have public forums and not always have it be public hearings, but meetings where we can sit amongst ourselves and talk about what we might not understand without being in the other shoes. And Diane and Katie, I know this is a tough subject, and all of us are glad with what happened. So I hope whatever I'm saying and others, you don't take this as something that's, against your family, because this was a real high point for our community, what happened, and the successful outcome.
All right, I'd like to start focusing us back in, so we'll have a couple more questions. And
if I may, while she's walking.
Hi, I'm Ed Waite, Captain EMT on Hinesburg Fire. Just to address a couple of things, we've got a pretty good core group of experts ourselves, and we're not starting a new healthcare system. We're improving on the current healthcare system we have now. And we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting from scratch from training. We're not starting from scratch for people. We're not starting from scratch for equipment. We are just looking to improve on the service we provide now. I can guarantee you, if the select board decides tonight that this is either going to be warned at town meeting, or if this is going to be put by Australian ballot, we will have enough meetings and enough informational meetings at the firehouse. Anybody that has a question can come and ask that question, and when it comes time to vote, you will be as informed as we could possibly make you. We can't tie you up and drag you to these meetings, but I can tell you, me personally, I've already talked to the chief. If we have to have an informational meeting every night of the week, except for Wednesdays, we train on Wednesdays, we will. We're not known for doing anything spur of the moment. Everything firefighters and EMTs do is based on our training and our knowledge. When we came to this conclusion that we wanted our own ambulance, it was based on our training and our knowledge. It's based on getting more training. To the point, when it comes time, if we are training with other agencies, we're not going to be just running calls in Hinesburg. But Kathy's point that you said, one call a day doesn't really get us enough calls. Going and training with other ambulance services, that's going to get us more and more time. Okay, so I just want to say that as a department, we are willing to do whatever it takes to get the public informed, but we need the select board to give us that 30 days and know that there's going to be a decision. We're not willing to put forth all this time and energy just to be told, no, we decided we're not going to do anything till November. I just finished up an EMTA class. I told my wife I want to start training with ambulance squads, and she said, well, you can't do it on a maybe. So I can't commit to training on ambulance squads if I don't know I've got some commitment from the select board that it's either going to go to a vote or it's going to be warned at town meeting, so everybody has the voice.
so we'll take one more question, I guess. And just, if there is one, I thought there was one. Maybe here? Yeah, yeah. Wait for the... and while we're on that subject about, what the select board can do and what we can't do, just to clarify, and I always can be corrected on the law, we cannot put this on the Australian ballot on March 3rd because there isn't the time that would have had to been warned sooner.
We'd have to, it's like a 2-year process. So you would have to put something on the warning to state that you wanted to vote via Australian ballot on a certain article.
So all of our budgets now are at town meeting. That's how we vote for budgets, and that's how we would have to do this one if we were to move forward with it, to, put it to the town. Now, if we wanted to do it on November or the following year, whenever, we could do that.
Missy, you want to speak to that?
Yes.
Just to confirm?
Missy Ross, Town Clerk. Because we are a town that votes our public questions on the floor at town meeting, we cannot have this on the ballot. It has to be an article to be acted on at town meeting. And the only way you can make it happen in the future is if you have something on the warning this year saying, we would like to vote this particular thing by Australian ballot at some future date. So you could do that, but you can't put it on the ballot in March.
As in some future date, like in November?
Sure.
Even
Yeah.
the next time? Yeah, okay.
Well, you could put this on, you could have this be an article to be discussed or acted on at town meeting on the floor, but you can't put it on the ballot to be voted on March 3rd. You would have to do it at town meeting, I think, because, you could do it at the primary, I suppose. There's a primary in August. So, well, there is no particular cutoff. It depends when you want to vote on it, so.
But you have to have a petition like I had to do, I tried to do in the correct time frame before this town meeting to make it an article on with the 5% of the voter population.
No, the select board can put something on, they can create an article for town meeting. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be by petition.
But anybody can force it.
Right.
With a petition.
Right, you could force it with a petition, but it would have had to been filed 40 days before. Is that clear? Clear as mud? Well, I didn't know it was happening before today, but.
What happened was I listened to my husband, who believes in the town, in the process, and we really found out last week that maybe the town in the process isn't quite what we needed it to be. So that's why I did the petition.
Okay, I'm glad you came, Missy. So we'll go with one more question.
Missy, I have a question. At the end of the town meeting, the moderator says, is there any more business to be brought before the town? Can something like the ambulance be brought up at that moment?
Well, Diane sort of asked this question today. And at town meeting, people can stand up and say, I make a motion to amend the fire department budget to add whatever the amount is that we're talking about here. Somebody can do that at town meeting.
Thank you. I'm Landon Dennison, and I speak as someone who's called 911 2 or 3 times this year, and I've gotten marvelous response from our rescue squad, and I'd like to thank all of them. And I was really impressed with how quickly the ambulance arrived from St. Mike's, and we needed additional help, and we got it from Charlotte. It all worked out pretty well. So I think we got a machine that works pretty well, and but our problem right now is transportation. How are you going to get an ill person or injured person into Burlington? And there are a lot of good suggestions that have come up, It's a complex business, as was mentioned, and I'd like to suggest that we obtain the services of Richmond and Charlotte, and we're not giving them anything. We're hiring their business, and that will give us time to act on suggestions that have come from the fire department, suggestions that Roger Giroux has given us, and we have time to study those things, use Richmond and Charlotte, and then in the meantime, keep our first response people happy, educated, and treat them well because they are good. And as a last thought, I agree with the person who spoke before. If we have a highly trained person on board who's only going to have 0 to 2 calls a day, they're not going to be very interested very long, and we'll lose them soon and have to hire somebody else. So anyway, think about hiring, contracting out until we have the problem settled. Thanks.
Thank you. So we're going to go with one more question.
I just had a couple clarifying.
Oh, go ahead. Get that mic there.
Yes, ma'am, I've forgotten your name. Michelle. I'm Dick St. George, Chief Slot Fire and Rescue. Okay. If I knew your last name, I probably grew up with you. But of your calls you run in Barrie as a medic, how many do you run at the paramedic level?
We have a paramedic on.
I understand you have them on, but how many do you run at the...
I don't know the actual number, but it's...
Okay, and of that percentage you do run, how many are for pain management?
Almost all.
Okay, so I have seen paramedics, basically they can start a toaster's heart. You do great work, but how many of those runs is that skill used? But most of your calls are at the AMT level.
And AMTs can give nitrous oxide, which is for pain as well. So.
Yes, which we, both us and Richmond do. So most of your calls are for pain management or an AMT level. Okay, that's the only questions I had for clarification.
Okay, thank you. So I think with that, we have a little more time. I'll turn to the board for comments or questions. And normally I wait to the end, but if you want, I'm happy to sort of give my sort of position where I am now and take it from there. So first of all, I want to appreciate everybody coming. A couple of just side comments. You know, at work, I'm a manager, so I hear all this stuff all day long from the management team and stuff, and then I'll talk to an employee and they'll have a question or they'll say something and I'll go, well, that's not right. Because I sort of assume everybody knows. So I think all of our EMTs and all of these emergency responders, they live and breathe this every day. And for me personally, this has been, you know, from the fire hose. And I had a conversation just a couple days ago with somebody about the ambulance, somebody that was just sort of talking about it. And, you know, I was able to say this and that and how we recover funds and, you know, the level of care that you need and just a lot of information. So I get that there are a lot of people in town that are going to vote their taxes, and they haven't, you know, it takes a lot of information to feel comfortable about voting. You can vote emotionally, and that's, you know, easy to do, and I do that sometimes. But this is a big, to me, this is a big concept, and it does take a while for it you begin to understand it. So it is a big issue, and I appreciate that we've had 3 weeks now, plus other time, and the time that the committee did and Renee, to even begin to get educated in this. Another thing I just note that, and I said this I think in the beginning, we're surrounded by some, excellent responders in every town all around us, and and that includes Hinesburg. I'm feeling, for most people in town that will vote, and I am 100% behind putting this to Australian ballot to let everybody vote on this. It isn't a decision I think the select board can make, because it is a big decision. And it's not a decision we should make in a vacuum. This is the topic today. It's a huge topic. It's very important, about how we get ambulance coverage. I think I'll give the fire department and Al and his team credit for the last 3 years. They've been saying, hey, St. Mike's, But really, maybe a year ago, we really got the word they were leaving. But, and so we've taken 3 days or 3 days of select board time to talk about this, but this is not the only thing happening in town. We have a wastewater treatment bond vote that's coming, probably in November. We've got water that we hope to expand if we want to continue to develop growth that will help pay for some of this and some of the justification for this. So there are a lot of other things. So we should consider all those things along with this important thing. And that's another reason, I think, to put it to a vote. We've had good coverage from St. Mike's. I think it was brought up that, if we were today saying, should we contract with St. Mike's? I think the answer would be no. But yet we've had 50 years with St. Mike's. And at that time, it was the one that, most people thought was, doing a great job, and they were. We've also been, it's been said several times and over again in different ways that the most important thing isn't, the ambulance that shows up, it's the first person that shows up, the EMT. And I think we've tried to support the EMT in town as much as we can, and now I'm motivated to do it more and more now that I know more and more. In fact, if you look at this year's budget, I was one that supported, let's get a full-time person here during the day, because not only will it help during the day when there are less people here, but that person can put a lot of time and effort into building a foundation for the EMTs, as they continue to grow in their organization and their capability, and as this town grows, the need to expand. So this year, you see that it will be brought to the town in the budget. I think it is something that we want to just take a little bit of time. I think we can solidify. We have to take some time to really, even if we contract this out, to solidify those contracts. We've got proposals, but it's a little unsure who's covering exactly what areas of town. How would we cover St. George? How would they contribute to that? We don't have an obligation to provide ambulance service to St. George. So how do we bring them into that? There's a lot of questions. And I think even though it is hard to predict long-term costs, I always like to say when you forecast, the next day the forecast is off. But I think it's a fair question. What are the long-term capital costs? Where might this go? And sure, it depends on development and it depends on a lot of other things, how the economy does. But I think it's fair to explore that a little bit more and to be able to point to questions. Even tonight, we've got different budgets out there, so what are we voting on? We need to have some real clarity, and I think the board can provide that. Here's the numbers that we would be voting on. And that's what we do for every other department. And I think the structure, too, the idea of having a board I think it's a great idea, and, you know, that helps clarify what the organizational structure will be and how the fire, EMT, ambulance works with the town. What's happened over time is you've had a organization by itself that has done a fantastic job and provided all the materials they needed. At some point, then the town kind of is in it, so now it's sort of two organizations together. There have been questions over time. I think the department's done an excellent job of opening their books and saying, here's where we are. So we've moved definitely in a good direction, so there's a lot more trust and understanding, but I think we really need to say, what is this organization? How will this organization really work as we bring full-time people in? And we'll have one to see how it works. And it is important that we make good decision on the best facts we have, with our eyes wide open. This is a vote that also isn't at your heart, and I get that, and it's for me too. I mean, nobody wants to be somebody who didn't vote for, you know, somebody else getting saved or helping a neighbor. And I'll just say this is just myself now, I'm not talking with the select board. In my opinion, I think if all the information's out there, even if it costs a lot of money, in my opinion, I think people will vote because I think they'll want an ambulance. That's just my opinion. But I think if we say they've got to vote on March and it doesn't pass, that's not good. And if it does pass, there'll be a number of people in town that will feel it was forced. And that's not a good thing either. You know, because our fire department gets what they want, but if a portion of people, even a small portion of people, aren't behind it, that's going to be a hard thing to heal. And we've had a couple things in town that have been that way, and that's, you know, not a good way to move forward. So there's my opinion on the whole thing. So I would look toward on the town warning, putting enough funds in there so we can contract out, so that we can maintain ambulance service until such time as we have a long-term plan, which I think myself and I assume the rest of the board, but we'll find out, would be looking for a townwide vote in November.
Yeah, and that would put that question to 2,500 voters instead of the 150 that show up on Monday night for a town meeting. It's really clear to me that that we are going to have an ambulance and continue 50 years of service. So we've had an ambulance now for 50 years. We're going to change how we do that, it sounds like. I think overall, Paul mentioned, you know, he's like, hey, this is a great idea, but I'm not there yet. And that's generally the consensus I hear from a lot of people. Everybody in this room, mostly, is really in the weeds with knowing, and they're really up to date on this, and they're really in depth on it. But and perhaps, you know, the 200-300 people on these lists, but there's a large group of people that still have not yet engaged in this conversation that need to know more about what we're talking about and the implications of it. And my guess is would vote for it. I think if this is done right, and maybe one of the ways done right that Phil lays out is to put this so that it is an Australian ballot in November, which isn't that far away, honestly, or even August, as Missy suggested, we might be able to do it then, that we would have overwhelming support as opposed to right now, maybe it would pass, maybe it wouldn't, I don't know. I know as a town, we sometimes like to, like a country maybe, get into our camps and kind of stay there. We've seen that with a couple issues in town. That didn't need to go that way, and as we kind of work through those issues and time and meetings and egos, we have come to peace with it a little bit and put the settle issues behind us and kind of look back on it and say, if I would have done it differently next time, here's next time. And I think the way to do that is to continue these conversations. We are just really now digging into these conversations as a community. A year ago, 2 years ago, whenever it was, Al started telling us, and you gentlemen started telling us we needed an ambulance. We were hearing it, but the town wasn't hearing it yet. I think the town is getting the message that this is a conversation we need to have, and soon. I don't think this is a put it off anymore kind of a thing. We've put off a lot of things in this town for many years. Town garage comes to mind. We took many years to get that done. I don't see this taking that long, and I think a year from now, we're in a much different space, and with broad community support. In my conversations with Al, that has been my conversations with him. My concern with him is making sure that as we go into this, we have broad community support on something that continues this celebration of 75 years we just celebrated? 75 years of hugely dedicated service to this town by this department. I don't want to see the intentions of making it better work against you. And if we have to get a petition to do this, this tells me that we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but I think we're very close. And I think that this town will see an ambulance in some fashion or another very soon. And you could argue maybe that this is a great exercise in why we need regionalization on a lot of different things. I don't think we're there yet either. That's still a ways away, but let's talk about that maybe at a different time. So I don't think we're ready yet for a conversation. I don't think we're ready yet for a vote. We're certainly ready for a conversation. I think we certainly should discuss this at town meeting. But I want all of the voters voting in on this. And that sounds like soonest that could happen might be the primaries. That's what I'm hearing from Missy, if not November.
Missy, please clarify. Straighten us out.
Please.
You could do it then, but the turnout will be way, way lower.
That's a good point.
It'll be really high in November, and I think that's the time to do it.
I think maybe, though, if we did have this on the primaries, you would have the biggest primary you've ever had.
That's true.
I bet you would. I bet you would. And that's what I want to see. I want to see everybody come out to vote for this.
August is also a hard time because a lot of
Sure.
people are away and people
Sure.
don't necessarily think ahead about getting an early ballot. So,
And that's not the first time you've said that. I've heard you say that before. So.
But it would have to be put on the ballot this year to consider a vote via Australian ballot for the following town meeting, is how it's worded in language. Is that?
you know, I think it would, you could vote on it as an article at town meeting, I think, but I'm not sure. We can get an opinion on that.
Okay.
So, I mean, either way, it can happen.
Right.
So, yeah.
I really would like clarification of how a question would get on the ballot in November, because from reading all the letters and all the Front Porch Forum posts and all the differing opinions and all the different ideas that people have, the one thing that I'm convinced of is that it needs to be a day when the polls are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and everybody in town has the opportunity to come and make their voice heard. And it seems like the presidential election in November would be a really good time to do that. So what's the process?
Seriously, this year?
So what's the process that we go through to make that happen?
My understanding is, and again, I would want to check on this, but my understanding is that you can put something at town meeting saying specifically, we want to vote this particular thing by Australian ballot, even though that is not how we typically vote our budgetary stuff. But we can do that for one particular item and make it happen at a future ballot election. So it could be next year, or, I mean, next town meeting, it could be November.
That's what we understood it to be too.
Yeah.
So at the town meeting, we could have, 2 warrant items. One, potentially authorize the select board to spend up to a certain amount of money to maintain ambulance service. The thought there is if we have to contract, we have the money to do that. And then we could put on that another warrant item saying to have an Australian ballot vote on our future ambulance strategy.
So I have a further question. If we do have this townwide vote in November, and say people have really talked about this issue, and we still have the town split, and half the town really wants to contract it out for the next 5 years, and the other half is really ready to have Hinesburg have its own ambulance, there's not a possibility that people can vote one way or another way, right?
No.
It's a yes or no on one issue.
It has to be a yes or no. All ballot articles have to always be a yes or no. The other thing I'm thinking out loud here, because this is new for me too, so oftentimes I have to research how to do these things. Oh, sure. I'm not sure. It might actually, the funding would not be available, I think, unless you did it at town meeting next year, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll talk to the elections division tomorrow and we'll figure it out. But you can, meanwhile, say, we would like to vote this article at a future. You don't have to specify the date. You just have to say, we want to do this. And so I think you can do that. And we'll get the wording from the elections division.
But at some point, if we want it in November, at some point, that's going to have to be decided. How does that process happen?
Well,
That would happen in the warning we
Right.
would do for
But
town
Missy
meeting.
just said we didn't have to be specific about when we wanted that to be voted on.
That's my understanding, but
So, I have 17 V.S.A. section 2680 pulled up right now.
Oh, okay.
Basically, the method of voting is the Australian ballot method of voting is only used if the town has voted to use it at a prior town meeting for budget and or public questions. So if, right here, yep. Letter E, a municipality shall not use the Australian ballot system at the same election at which its voters decide the system shall be used. So,
Yeah, I mean, that might actually be more related to, let me just see, what's municipality?
this is for public questions.
Right, yeah. So yes, I think that we can do that. Yep.
That's my understanding of it too. All right, so let's keep going. Did you want to continue?
No, those were I really wanted clarity on that, and I kind of have it.
Okay. Tom, did you want?
I guess I'll go. I mean, there's so many things to say, and it has been a good conversation. Like Phil said, we've learned so much, and we're still learning, and that's part of the problem. I'll start with my personal preference, and I'm going to stick with some consistency here because I've said for years that I think the only path forward for a small state and small towns in Vermont is regionalization of services, sharing of services, whether it's ambulance, fire, police, any and all of it. Schools as well, we've already done that. I've read so many articles, I've talked to so many people over the last few weeks since this conversation has started about the sustainability of each town owning their own, operating their own, with a declining population, an aging population. And it worries me that we would be, in Carl's words, reaching a point that we wouldn't be able to turn back from if we choose one direction. I see no downside at all in contracting for an unlimited amount of time, whatever we choose it to be. Maybe it's a year, Maybe it's 5. We don't know. But what I do know is I still have a lot of questions about how this is going to operate and ultimately what it's going to cost. I'm very, very concerned that this budget only shows 1 year and there's not a 5-year plan, because I think Jeff and I both said there's going to be a building, and we just built the town garage. We know how much buildings cost. It's very, very expensive. And to Phil's point about the wastewater system, that could be upwards of $11 million on our taxpayers. And we don't have a choice in that matter. So the board is not only balancing the ambulance and fire and all this in this year's budget, we have to look down the road and see what this is going to do to the taxpayers. And one thing that really struck me through this whole conversation, Mr. St. George brought it up, maybe it was last week, that Hinesburg is very lucky because we have our kids volunteering generation after generation. And he said that's no longer true in Charlotte, because the kids can't afford to live in Charlotte anymore. And I went to school with a lot of kids from Charlotte, and they don't live in Charlotte anymore. And that kind of makes me sad. So I don't want Hinesburg to be that place where kids can't afford to live. But I'm really afraid that if we keep going down these tracks of every town doing it themselves, even though it may be ideal, and it probably is ideal for an ambulance to be in every town, but is it practical? And in my opinion, it's not practical. But as we get toward a town vote, I guess I would be fine at some point allowing everybody to have their voice heard. That's what we do. But this budget needs to be tightened up, and in my opinion, it needs to show the forecasted growth before I would be comfortable not educating people, but giving people the information I think they need to make an educated choice. And I just don't think we're there yet. Not when we have other options on the table.
So obviously, this is a really important issue, and I'm grateful for everybody who came out, especially all the EMS people. And I don't know if you orchestrated this, but it kind of underlines the importance of the ambulance issue. There are so many different complexities and so many really good questions that we still haven't addressed. And it seems that it's not even possible now to have it be Australian ballot on March 3rd. So I thought we needed an ambulance, and I still think we need an ambulance at some point, but I would like to hear all those questions addressed as well as they can be. So I think it's a great idea to have a village-wide town vote in November about the ambulance, and then to have more meetings like this in let's see, we're in January now, February, March, maybe give ourselves a break in April, but maybe May, maybe June, maybe September and October, to keep on discussing this and really digging into these details, so that when November comes, we have a populace that really has a clear understanding of what this means in terms of the tax rate, in terms of a long 5-year plan. Will there be a new building? Will there be more full-time people that have to be hired? And many more questions like that.
So I'm just going to say the same thing I said last week. Thank you for everything you guys do. If I could, I'd let you have your ambulance tomorrow. I hear the concept of regionalization, and that's there, but I think we've got the population that needs an ambulance. I think we've got plans to grow, and I know we've been saying we're going to grow for the last, seems like 20 years. But there are ones that are going through that are close, and I agree that's important. The one thing that I have is, I have to think about everybody in this role. It's not just what I want, it's the town, right? And what everybody here wants to do. And we've heard there's differing opinions. To Diane's point, it's those folks that said, I need to know more. Dr. Giroux had some good points. I'm a little concerned with the merging of police and EMS and fire. I come from the world of, and not from the world of emergency services. I trust you guys that fire and EMS can go hand in hand. But I also in the belief if you got a lot of people doing a lot of things, it's just kind of done. I'd like to see some, hey, I got a specialist in this, and then you can do that cross thing. But I'm not going to tell you guys how to put it together. But what I did want to see is how we're going to get there. I think this community deserves a great ambulance service, just like we've got our EMS, just like we've got our police and we've got our fire, and I want that to happen. I think people would be behind that. I think there's a lot of emotion, and I think people would be voting on emotion. When I asked to see a 5-year plan, it was sure the financials, because I think we have to take into account let's be honest, there's gonna need to be a new building. And if for nothing else, we talked about how to attract and retain the volunteers or to hire people. And what I heard from Richmond, who said they had a long wait list of folks, well, how do you do that when everybody else is having a hard time? It's about being on top of the latest technology, techniques, tools. I want us to do all of that. But I need to see how we plan to do it, and we talk about paramedics, and I'm hearing, well, you don't really need a paramedic. It's only 3% of the time. Yet all the ambulance services around here have paramedic service. So I would like us, and this kind of goes to you'd want to see that level of service. And I know you guys can do it, but I need to see how you're planning to get there. What does that cost? And what are those things? Because I think there are a lot of folks in this town that need to see that and be educated on that. It'll happen, but I think we have to put it out there and let people see it. And I agree, we need to have an Australian ballot. We can't have it folks on the floor at town meeting day, right? We need people to have that opportunity to vote. So for me, I'm not saying no to an ambulance by any means. I'm saying we need to get to the point where folks can have their say and people can be into it and everybody had their chance to vote, and how it falls is how it falls. And I think it'll fall to getting one. We could talk about consolidation, even if we have a service. So that's where I'm at. And I'd want the warning to say it's November, because I think between now and November, there's plenty of time to, I think a lot of folks are just seeing this now in Front Porch Forum, but to get folks understand the different aspects of it. What do we envision this department to be, with where we're going? I just think people have those questions, and I know you guys can do it, and I just want to put that out there. So that's for me, the November ballot thing is to make sure we get it on the ballot and it's out there. So yeah, I'm for let's get it on the warning, let's make sure it's on the November ballot, and then let's all select board fire department figure out how we're gonna show people what this is, so when November comes, they can make an educated decision. So that's where I'm at. But thank you guys again for all you do, really.
So I guess what I hear is pretty much a consensus by the board. And later on tonight, we will be, we're going to review our budget, so people can certainly stay and make any last-minute changes. In the budget right now, if it goes forward to town meeting, has the full-time person that would start basically in July. And so I think we'll add to the warning an item to authorize, this is all voted on by town meeting, it's not the select board deciding, but putting a warning on there to authorize the select board to spend up to $75,000 to maintain ambulance service. And another item on the warning to conduct a townwide vote by Australian ballot in November, whatever date that is, to determine the long-range strategy to obtain local ambulance service. Any other comments by anybody?
I would only ask, is it necessary to put the November date on there, or can you make it more flexible?
I think
Like
we
add a
would-
future date.
Based on this, I think that's what we would want to do, I think.
To specify the date, or to
Yeah.
make it more flexible?
No, to specify the date.
From what I was understanding, but she could
And that November one doesn't necessarily have to have money associated with it, because we'll have had enough money to get us to the next budget season. But we would be instructed by the town, if it was to pass, to say, this is the direction we want to go. And people would have an idea on how much it would be. Missy's shaking her head like that could work, that. Okay.
So the fixed amount from Charlotte, 52,500. And then
Yeah. Wait, you'll need the, let me get the mic, because only, yeah.
If it could be made flexible, that would be preferable to me, because we're giving ourselves a new deadline. What if we're not ready then? I'd like to have it be something where November 8th, that's that Tuesday, or at some point in the near future, something like that. But I'm at least look into whether that's a possibility.
I'm not sure.
Phil, can I just
You're
ask-
saying that date or after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case that we don't
Yeah.
you guys don't feel we're ready, or the town, you sense the town doesn't feel it's ready. Or regionalization is something that's now maybe within our reach.
Maybe potentially, the information that comes to November could say, hey, look, here's a regional option, which we would have, you know, so we'd have information on it. So potentially, you know, that could be out there, and people could vote based on that, I guess.
I'm thinking I'm having questions about, you just said $75,000 to contract would be in the warning. Where are you getting that?
We're looking at this right now. That was just a number that
Oh,
was
okay, because
about in between those.
if I'm confused as a fire family, I'm a little concerned that
Yeah.
other people sitting in here might be as confused. Weren't you? Okay.
And 58.
And then the 52,500, and then adding
Hi,
7,000.
hello. Yes, I think the point about leaving the date flexible for the meeting was that if by later in the next year you are no further along in your budgets or answering the questions or getting education out to, this is my first meeting, this is the first I've heard about it, other than a Front Porch Forum yesterday and today. Getting education out. If you're no further along in October than you are now, you might not want to have a town-wide vote in November. I think that was the point that Mr. Hemingway was making. My name's Ken.
Yeah.
Phil, if I could for just, if I understood what Missy said earlier, it was that we can vote on this specific issue via Australian ballot at any point, correct, Missy? You don't have to associate a date with it, just identify a particular issue to be voted.
Yeah.
Okay, so that,
Correct.
Right.
It'd be the same. Right. That's
So
right.
I guess since the conversation's not to the select board and it's hard for people to follow, so I think we're getting clarification that if we were to warn something at town meeting that says we will have a future vote on the long-term strategy for local ambulance coverage, that date does not necessarily have to be there.
That is what I believe to be the case.
Well, we could certainly find that out in the next day or so.
Phil, I would say the advantage of having the date there is that it pushes us to really educate the people in this town and to have the discussions that we're beginning to have now. If we don't specify the date, we may be talking about this for the next 5 years without coming to a decision, which I think might be really taxing on the EMS people.
And I would
Go ahead.
I would just say real quick that I'd support having the date on there. One reason kind of what Mary Lee says, but also I look at it this way. If the select board and the fire department were to not get that information out and we were right here again next year, we're going to be in the same spot where that vote goes. So it behooves us to get that education out. You know what I mean? And that includes, you know, all of the options. I just think, you know, we should put a date on it because like anything in town government, it will continue to roll. I'd like to see something set.
Shame on us. I think the incentive is the town. I don't think this topic's going away, right?
Right,
So
but
that's going to be the push. I mean, I think the date you're saying
will
is.
drive the conversation.
It'll
because
drive
if
the
you don't have
conversation,
the
but I
conversation,
think the
then
folks right in
date's
front of
there.
us are going to drive the conversation.
Talking about, yeah.
Whether there's a date on it or not.
It sounds like we've got pretty much consensus. We'd like to get this vote sooner rather than later. We hear the idea that maybe people won't be ready to. That's a possibility, but I think it's up to us to get them ready to vote, because this is, you know, this is a big topic. And in the same way, they're going to have to vote on a wastewater treatment plant. You have no choice. You got to get educated and vote. Go ahead. Well, and then we're going to move on. Go ahead, Carl.
Is this working? Different question, but I think having a date is a good idea. My question is, are you doing a separate vote on the contract, or are you going to build that number into the fire department budget item?
Good question. So we would have that as a separate warrant item for town meeting.
And what happens
This
if it's
town meeting.
defeated?
Then we wouldn't have the funds to do that.
To do any ambulance? Would it not be better to put it in the highway, the fire department budget?
Yeah.
I don't think we would vote down the highway. And that's why I think it's important to have the November date, so those people that wanted it decided sooner know there's a date certain that
Okay,
we will
fair enough. Go
stop talking about it and either vote it up or down.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question of both Charlotte and Richmond? So I just want to make sure we understand what the proposal is. So for Richmond to include St. George, is that a total of $42,370? Correct. Okay. And then Charlotte, is your total $52,500?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
There's overlapping area though,
So those numbers are subject to change a little bit? So as they stand.
we were pretty set in the area we did at the falls.
Okay.
As
So
I stated at your first board meeting, there was reasons why we did those particular areas.
I just want to state that the total as it stands now, based on those two proposals, is $94,870. Just to make sure we're clear on that.
And just to clarify, we've gotten these proposals from Richmond and Charlotte. We definitely appreciate it. You know, they told us they're willing to step in and help us. We haven't at all negotiated, not that we're going to negotiate them down, but we haven't defined the boundaries. We haven't defined how St. George would get coverage or who's going to pay for, I don't know why we would pay for St. George since we have no obligation to cover them for ambulance service. We do cover them for EMT. So, first response, yes, and fire, and, well, there's some police
Separate
services.
one, but there's a contract
So,
for fire
so
and
the idea would be on this warrant item to allow the select board to spend up to, and we would have, you know, basically 4 or 5 months to work out the details. And with both, so everybody understands exactly what we're covering.
Also, please keep in mind that based on the decision tonight, if we have a firm date, if you will, of something, we can also have a discussion with St. Mike's about extending beyond July 1st.
That's right. And that's in the
And
mix,
that's
too.
go-
That's
yes,
correct.
Which would
Yep, yep,
take the contracts out of the picture.
yep.
Because by July 1st, you need some vote in November, ain't gonna solve
I'm going to recognize Diane. Go ahead.
I'm just curious about St. George money. They pay $40,000 to the town of Hinesburg. It goes into the fire budget, is my understanding, to help offset stuff. So how much are Richmond charging us for St. George? And where is that money coming from? Because if you're taking it out of our fire budget, That means our fire budget's missing some money in the budget that Al and Renee created for the fire department.
Yeah, so Richmond gave their proposal for Hinesburg, and that was $35,370. They gave a separate figure for St. George for $7,000. So Hinesburg's portion would be $35,370.
But that's not coming out of the proposed fire budget from St. George money, because our first responders and our fire cover there. Is that
So
true?
what we get from St. George is for our fire services and our first response services. It's not ambulance. Fire and first response from
So
Hinesburg.
has St. George agreed to $7,000 more for their ambulance coverage?
No, we haven't had any discussions with them. That's my point.
We're not to that place.
Right. There are,
So
if
if
we're
it
moving
come-
in that direction, we would need to work on that. Well, all we did was get proposals up to this point, so
Okay.
we know, how much it would cost to contract it out and how much, we've come up with some costs on ambulance service.
So what happens if St. George looks at you and says, we're already paying $40,000 to you, we're not paying it? Where's that $7,000 coming from?
I don't think we're under obligation to cover, this is me talking, I don't think we're under obligation to St. George to cover them for ambulance service.
We're their first response and fire.
I think Wayne is here, he's on the select board.
V.S. is in the back.
Yes, we do. St. Mike's goes there.
All right, I'm sorry. Before we start that kind of discussion, you will address the select board. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Wait for the mic.
Is there any discussion of proration? These numbers are contracted services for a year, I presume, and there's a chance we might not need it for a year. There's a chance we might enter it later.
Paul, we haven't even started those negotiations.
Okay, I just
so
hope
don't
you leave-
imply like we would just pay that without looking at all
So all I'm
that.
asking is make sure proration is an option.
I think we'd get there.
They've said that.
Rob Mullen, Shalat Fire and Rescue. St. George, according to the District 3 matrix, which we all go by for EMS in Chittenden County, the way they've got it set up is it goes out to 8 ambulances, and the way the order of that right now is the first run ambulance to St. George is St. Mike's, next is Williston, next is UVM, next is South Burlington, then Shelburne, then Essex, Charlotte, and then Richmond.
There's the answer. That's already established.
And this is also how we based our divider when we did our numbers for our proposal.
Right.
Was by the matrix according to District 3.
Okay?
How often is that matrix updated?
It would.
They're in the process of updating it now to go 10 deep
So
because of the number of
question was,
calls.
how often is the matrix updated, and it gets updated? I think if we were to contract out, it would
Have to
get
be
updated.
yes. I know that they're in the process of doing it now. It goes about 8 deep, and they're looking to go 10 deep because of how busy services are.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for your patience and with us, your good questions, respectful dialogue. Obviously, there's more questions and more work to do. Yeah.
Can I, before everybody leaves, can I, in order for us to get to that place where we're either prepared for a November vote or whatever that date is, can folks offer some suggestions of things that they would need to get questions answered? So maybe some other outstanding questions, other things that they have, so that we aren't in the same place 6 months from now? So that we know what you need, what questions you still have. There's been a lot of information gathering, but clearly not everybody has that and has access to it or has been at those meetings. So just let us know. We want to get that information out. And actually, I was very pleased to have this room filled, because that means there's a better representation of the town. And so that was a good thing. And the more that we can have that, the better. So please let us know what you need, and it's our job to get that to you.
And if I could add to that, Renee, I would ask the same folks you're asking to find somebody who has yet to engage in this conversation, because I really want everybody in on this. I want this to go 100%. So we need to have everybody in on this. So find somebody that they haven't thought about this or talked about it yet, and tell them your opinions, and have them tell us. Certainly have them vote.
And town meeting is March 2nd, Monday night, so everybody's welcome to be there.
It's always a good time.
Just real quick, do you know how many people are watching in this on the TV, on VCAM or whatever?
Hold on.
Maybe he does.
Ken?
Only a few right now. But there may be more on the.
500,000?
There wasn't a fight.
I know that a lot of, it's, most of the time it's live, but you always can go there and watch any of these.
Yeah, you can always go back. That's actually the better way to do it sometimes, because they don't
Yeah,
buffer.
then you can skip when I'm talking and,
Yeah. But that's the challenge. Find somebody who hasn't engaged yet and go engage them. That's your challenge.
Very, very quickly, just a reminder, Saturday at the fire station, 9 to noon, we're having a CPR compression-only clinic. It takes about 5 minutes, and you can become certified in compression-only CPR.
so just again, so Saturday, 9 to noon,
At the
free CPR compression classes, takes 5 minutes.
And you're certified.
Yeah.
All right.
I should do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you
Thanks.
guys for doing that.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, that was a good 5 or 10 minutes, good discussion. In fact, a lot of people, I think a number of people felt they were glad we had a good open discussion, so. Absolutely. Difficult topic, but we'll keep moving. Quite engaging, yeah.
Things are engaging.
So the next item on the agenda is finalizing the FY21 general fund budget and the capital transfer budget. There were a couple of slight changes made to the budget, or not, from last time?
From the last time? I mean, what you guys decided to do was to allocate 150,000, so that's reflected in there. And then you decided to apply additional fund balance to add extra for the reserves and the sidewalk repair and maintenance, and the sidewalk replacement, future replacement of the sidewalk plow.
So 15 for to bulk up the sidewalk repair construction fund, it's all one line. And then an extra 10 toward the sidewalk plow we're saving for potential purchase of one that works better, I
And
guess.
so that utilized the bulk of the amount of fund balance that we could use outside, and still reserving the 10% of the total of FY21 expenditures. Because we've shown it in the budget and those amounts, we don't need to do a separately warned item on that, because we've showed it clearly in here. I'll also repeat it in my budget memo, which I wanted to wait to do until after these conversations tonight, because I have to keep redoing things.
Right.
Yeah.
So, those were the only changes you guys made last time. So it shows a total of 5.85% of expenditures. And actually, I'd have to get to my spreadsheet so I can show you tax rate piece. Just a minute. Bear with me.
While Renee's doing that, I want to recognize her ability to pull up documents. I mean, it's hard enough for me just to sit and listen and think, and never mind do that.
It's because she wrote the damn bill.
That's right. I was going to say, don't say something if she might pull something up that contradicts what you've been saying.
All right. All right, so our fund balance before we utilize the 150,000 and then the extra 10,000 and 10,000 for sidewalk plow, an extra 15,000 or vice versa for the sidewalk, was $182,905.71. So we've utilized the bulk of that, and we still retained the $419,524.29, which is reflective of 10% of this expenditure budget. So our tax rate in the current year, FY20, was 0.5296. This proposed tax rate, making a lot of assumptions about the grand list and all of that, is 0.5579. So it's a difference of just over 2.25 pennies on the tax rate.
Congratulations.
Which means on a $200,000 home, the difference in a year over FY20 is $56.63. The difference on a $300,000 home is $84.95, and the difference on a $400,000 home is $113.26. A full tax rate for FY21, based on the assumptions we've made, $200,000 home, their municipal portion of their tax rate, which is a little over 0.25%, 25% of their tax bill. $200,000 home, $1,115.83 for the full year. $300,000 home, $1,673.75. And a $400,000 home, $2,231.66. So just for a little reference.
We always think of our tax bill and we think of the whole bill, and it's quite big. But if you look at that and you have a $300,000 home and you're spending $1,600, $150 a month maybe, and you're getting the roads plowed and sanded and paved, and you have fire and EMT and police and planning and zoning and what's that? Library services, and you're providing some resources to folks in need. That's when you look at it, we can't help but look at the overall bill. But as far as, yeah.
So, and then as far as percentages go, the police, they're all pretty much standards vary. They stay pretty uniform year to year. So our police is 14.46% of the budget. Fire is 10.36%. Highway, 24.83%. Benefits, 8.47%. Insurances, 4.10%. Library, 5.37%. The Hinesburg Community Resource Center, which is newly on the town budget, is 0.5%. Debt service, 7.35%, and agency funding, 0.34%. General government, which comprises just about everything except for what we have in intergovernment, which is like the Green Mountain Transit, our county tax and things like that. So the general fund government is $938,518, which is 22.37%. Intergovernmental funds are $77,012, which is 1.84%. So this was the pie chart I'd shown you last time. I also did the proposed tax rate of what each of those percentages of the departments cover and what their portion of the tax rate is. So that's on there. I'll be repeating. I'll be having some of this information in my budget memo. And if you guys can think of, I asked you this question last time, if you think of any other way that you think it might be helpful to present the information, let me know, because I can do a lot of different things to present it in a different visual way. So,
we don't need to vote on we've already done the capital. Do we need to vote on this? I don't think so.
So you just need to...
Because it's in the warning, and indirectly.
It's in the warning right now, but so is everybody okay? This was your final chance.
Yeah.
If you wanted to make any changes, we have to do it tonight and I'll make the changes as we sit here. But going through, hopefully you've looked through all of this, the revenues, and then on the last tab, major drivers and increases, I went line by line on the expenditures, and everything on the top half of this shows lines that increased by 5,000 or greater over the previous fiscal year. And so not only did I put what that was and the amount, I put the line number so that when people want to look at that and go back into the budget, and then in the detail of what that was for. I did the same thing with savings or decreases of 5,000 or greater, so that's reflected on the bottom half of this and gives the same information. So if you go through this, you see anything, let me know. Any errors, there are a few things, I've got some lines to put in, right side, things like that, but, and I'll do the page breaks and everything, but I wanted to wait until the end, until we made sure we landed on everything, and there wasn't anything else I was gonna have to add or take out.
Have we double-checked the numbers on the warning?
I have. I've checked them. I've checked them, I've double-checked them, and I've triple-checked them. Some of those checking happened late at night last night, so then I checked them again today, just to make sure that
I actually looked at them too, and I'll do that one more time for sure.
So,
Yeah.
and I'll check them again tomorrow. So, I mean, if there's any minor things like that, I can change that. I just need to understand that what you guys, if you guys are approving this.
So you guys all set?
I'm fine with it.
Jeff, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is finalizing the town warning. So we have the draft based on previous years. The numbers have been checked. They'll be checked maybe one more time. The only other item besides that, we could go over it line by line if we want, or article by article.
I think it'd be helpful for you, if there's anyone that doesn't understand what these numbers are, or what the, the top and the bottom, let me know, because I can go through that piece of what it is. So like, for example, in Article 3, shall the town approve a general government budget of $1,851,236 with the estimated sum of $1,300,000, vision's really bad at this time, $380,036 appropriated from property taxes. So, on each of these articles, there's certain lines in the revenue line that offset a specific budget. So in highway, there's a state highway aid in the revenue side, which is $138,000. Offsets the highway budget. So I subtract $138,000 from the highway's overall budget, and that's what that bottom number is. Same thing with police. On the revenue side, there's a whole column of different police budgets, police revenue sources, and so that total is subtracted from their total expenditure.
Because we don't have to raise the taxes for that, so
Right.
therefore it's not warned
There's
as
revenue that directly
amount.
offsets that
Just
budget.
putting that there just sort of says, we acknowledge that, I guess.
And our fire budget is offset by the St. George contract, so the $40,000, so that the total fire budget, I subtract that $40,000, and that's what we raised with property taxes.
Okay.
That's slightly true of the,
What's that?
that's slightly true of the police as well.
The police get
Nope.
Don't they get something from St. George?
They do, they have a separate contract.
right,
But
right.
the fire one is just for our
Right.
first response and fire services.
No, I know, but we have a similar agreement with them for police service as well.
For police services, yeah.
Not nearly as much.
It's
It's a
No,
little
no.
bit,
it's
but.
No, but-
done
So
differently, yeah.
it would be offsetting the community police along with ticket money that
Yeah.
gets raised and,
Yeah.
um,
Because we provide
overweight
police
trucks.
service into
Yeah.
Charlotte, yeah.
All right, so, I guess what I would propose, and I could make a motion, to add 2 more articles there. The first one would be for the ambulance to allow the select board to authorize the select board to obtain townwide ambulance service, and the amount we should put there, did you come up
Well,
with?
if we added all of those figures, it was 94,000.
Minusing.
94,870, and then you minus the 7,000.
87,670.
Yep. $87,870.
So if we put that, it's authorize us to spend up to that amount.
Yeah.
You know, that would allow us to, first of all, potentially St. Mike's may stick on with us, so we wouldn't have to spend that money, or maybe we provide some funds for them to do that. You know, it's all sort of up in the air now. We've gotten proposals from Charlotte and Richmond, but we haven't, I'll say negotiating, we're not necessarily trying to get their price down, but at least, yeah, have a good conversation, understand the limits, understand some of those fine details about it. You know, find out, hey, Richmond, are you going to ask that $55 thing to our folks or not? You know, just so we know everything up front. And so we have up to this amount of money to spend, and that would be potentially providing ambulance coverage for the next year. And if, you know, an ambulance vote changes things, maybe we don't have to do it for next year, or potentially maybe we end up having to do it for a year and a half till whatever happens. But this at least gets us through that next budgetary year, and enough funds, what appears to be plenty of funds to get it done.
So do you want to say for the year following July 1st, 2020, when St. George will stop their, St. Mike's will stop their entry? Well, when you say the next year, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Well, this warning's all about July 1st to July 1st
Fiscal
to
year.
June
I see.
30th.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that-
FY
yeah,
21
that's-
fiscal year.
That's
Okay.
what, we can spend that money in that time frame.
Okay, so for the next fiscal year.
Yes, yes. So what was the number?
87,870.
Yeah, $87,870, but just to acknowledge, my understanding is also that, you know, St. George, they pay us the $40,000. So that 7,000 may be a surprise
Yeah,
to them.
I get that, yep.
Okay.
I get that, so.
Is it our job to take care of their ambulance service?
No, I don't think so. But I think our guys, if they were to have an ambulance, then at some point, if they were to have an ambulance, then their EMT, their emergency response would include that.
Well,
So we have to, that's a discussion to have with them.
I get that, but I just don't, I mean, I don't think we're going to be springing it on them, but I want to
No.
make sure that they understand that they,
Yeah, so I mean, we have some
That's the
time.
change.
You know, this doesn't start March 1st, this starts July 1st, so.
I think they may have likely see that as that 40,000, our first response service,
And
our
St.
fire
Mike's.
service, and we also have St. Mike's mixed in with our service too, because St. Mike's
Right.
responds to Hinesburg and St. George.
I suppose they could
Wow.
choose just to
Right.
rely on mutual aid.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some unknowns there, so again, this is to appropriate up to this amount and authorize the select board to obtain townwide, or maintain, maybe either obtain or maintain, townwide ambulance service. So I'd make that motion to have, and you're seconding it.
And you can give me that language.
Yeah, and I would and the motion would include authorizing Renee to wordsmith it as appropriate.
Can you read the rough version? that you have
Appropriate
written?
up to $87,870 and authorize the select board to obtain, or maybe I'll say maintain townwide ambulance service.
For the next fiscal year.
Well, I think that's, they all could say that.
Okay.
can I just double check your numbers, Renee? Because I had 42,370 plus 52,300, which gave me 94,670. Maybe I missed a digit.
So Again, my vision at night here is not so great. So I had Richmond's proposal is $35,370.
Yep.
And Charlotte's proposal of $52,500. Plus Richmond's proposal for St. George of $7,000. And I believe it came to $94,870. Is that?
Okay, 52.5, that's where the difference was. I had 52.3.
Okay.
Yep.
$94,870 for the total.
And, potentially, Charlotte may decide they don't want to do it, and we have to do it all with Richmond or whatever. I mean, there's a lot. That's why, to obtain, we're not defining it. Go ahead.
If I may offer a suggestion, because St. George has not been very involved in these conversations. We don't know how much they're aware of.
Right.
May I suggest that you want it authorized up to the $95,000, and also state that you will be opening discussions with St. George for reimbursement for the $7,000, whatever it is. Because if St. George says, well, I'm sorry, we're already under contract and you provide us with this service,
we might get
your
stuck.
hands are tied.
Yeah.
Or the fact that St. George might just contract
Yes.
Williston or something.
They were here, he
Yeah, I
was
saw
here
it.
tonight, and he was very surprised that the ambulance wasn't part of the 40,000.
Okay.
So I'm sure he'll be in,
So,
I told him to
I
be
mean,
in
we could
contact
put
with
that
him.
in there and explain,
Better go high and then come in low.
and
than-
cover ourselves legally.
And that way you're
because
covered.
Maybe we are authorized, maybe.
How would we, or I should say, when would we negotiate that? Because obviously our costs are going up for ambulance service. So why would some of that not be expected to be, defrayed by who we're serving? I mean, it's not like, we have a choice in this either. We don't want our costs to go up, but they are.
So the
So to
only thing,
assume that I'm just gonna get it for free and I don't know.
Well, I think what's on the table is, we have an agreement, but I don't have that agreement in front of me, and exactly what is the wording of that agreement? And
Okay.
sometimes an agreement is what's the understanding and what's been said verbally, whatever. So we don't really know that, but we can certainly explore it. But it might not be a bad idea to cover ourselves, just in case. We don't want to leave ourselves short or
Do you remember, Renee, there was something written?
well, what we did agree to was a 2-year contract. And so it'd be the second year of that 2-year contract for the $40,000.
$40,000 to provide EMS and fire service?
Yeah, and so I'd have to look exactly how it was worded. I mean, obviously, at the time, the conversation in our minds was for first response and fire services. But at the same time, I could also see where our ambulance service is provided by St. Mike's. Our ambulance service was also, transferred to
seem
St.
part of the
George,
package,
so.
maybe. We can put that amount in there, that additional amount, and maybe by town meeting, we might have figured this one out. Ideally, that'd be great. So we can explain it one way, we're stuck because we're getting their $40,000, and that's, unintentionally now part of it. Or we can say, hey, we had a discussion with them, and they understand that it's not part of it.
No, I don't think I'd want to go before our taxpayers and say, we're stuck. I mean,
Well,
Driving it, just the opposite.
So, we're going to put this language in Article 10.
Yep.
And then below Article 10, just like it reads now, it has, if voters approve Articles 3 through 10 as presented, total general fund expenditures of, and in that highlighted, even though there's a line crossed, that's the figure that we were at before we'd add in this $94,870 and then be required with the estimated blank to come from property tax revenue. So once we've landed on this number and that language, then I can make those changes.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. One is to do that and then have this be an additional thing, but I'm leaning more your way, include it all as the total budget.
Just come down.
And then that shows some unity by the board, or, I mean, they can ask us individually anyways, that, hey, should we do this or not? That it says, hey, this is what we think the cost is now. Or up to that amount.
So obviously, if some new information came out that, something completely changed between now and town meeting, we could decide maybe the Article 10 is not, maybe that's amended on the floor. That amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think any one of us could amend it on the floor. So we'll do the full total.
And just for theoretical exploration, what if the voters vote down Article 10?
Then we got to come up with Plan B.
Drop back 10 and 5.
Hey, in the same way, they could decide they don't want a police department, which has happened in towns.
Right, yeah.
So we don't have to make a plan for that.
I think we want to use
I'm just curious. I'm not saying we have to make a plan.
Yeah.
I know in the past, school budgets were voted down, and then they had to have another town meeting and another vote, so.
Maybe that's what we might have to do.
So I think, as typical, we've been doing our February meetings for our budget public hearings. We use those opportunities to talk about this Article 10, what that means. And if there's any status updates or any changes, we can inform folks at that time.
I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
going to happen. I'm just in the theoretical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a good
Yeah.
question, and that's a good answer.
So,
I think a lot of the answer, Marilee, will probably be driven by the people who are voting it down, no? Because if they're voting it down, they must be voting it down for a reason, and.
I would be surprised if it got voted down.
No.
But
I mean, I agree, I'm just sort of.
I think the more open, we've been very open, and the more educative we can be, then the less chance there is of that.
and I think, to repeat again and just, please share this with others as they talk to you. I mean, what is it so the people that still have questions, what is it they're still looking for? What are the things that we can do to provide that information? Or to further share that information so that we won't be at the same place again when the vote does happen, so.
Absolutely.
So what if Mike says they'll cover us and that's already warned? It's a mute, that warning will be a mute point?
It would be because this authorizes to spend up to. We don't have to spend it all.
0 is applicable.
So you could just say, well, we did this, but we don't need to use it.
So you're saying if St. Mike's did that before town meeting?
Right.
So
Yeah.
on the floor, they could make an adjustment, and so we could remove that $94,870.
And do you guys do that yourselves, or do you have to have somebody from the floor do it?
Someone from the floor.
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think I could probably make the motion, I think.
Or you could say a phrase
Yeah,
and
right.
somebody could make that motion from the floor.
But I think, Diane, if St. Mike's said, well, we have to talk to the board, and there wasn't a decision made until April, I think that money just wouldn't be spent.
Yeah.
So it'd just be worded up,
Right.
up to the board has the authorization to spend up to an amount. If we didn't need to, then
Lake Iroquois pesticide is an example.
it, goes
Yeah,
back in,
right.
so.
Right. Okay, so now I'd make another motion. Oh, good thing you're here.
Should we vote on it?
Should we- All those in favor of the motion to appropriate 87, whatever the number is,
$94,870.
$870, authorize the select board to obtain or maintain townwide ambulance service. Say aye.
Aye.
It's contagious.
So next,
And another article for
yeah,
voting.
the next would be, so I think the only thing that's in dispute is, do we define the date or do we leave it open? I'm okay with defining the date, so I'll start it that way. Authorize, shall the voters authorize the town to conduct a townwide vote by Australian ballot in November to determine a long-range strategy to maintain local ambulance service.
To maintain local ambulance service.
Well, we have it now. So we have local ambulance service. I don't know, whatever you, however you want to define it.
Or just simply saying.
Ambulance service.
Ambulance transport service, or, you
Yeah.
know, whatever.
What was your verb there? Maintain? That doesn't, I thought it would be establish.
Yeah.
Well, we have it now.
We have it now.
Maintain, meaning we have St. Mike's service now,
But
to keep a service.
So what we're talking about, what we've been talking about, is whether the town will accept this gift of an ambulance and develop a transport service. So
Right.
it's not maintaining, it's establishing something new.
Well, right now, we're talking about a contract until we get to that vote.
But I thought this was about the November vote.
It is.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is about the November vote, and to determine the long-range strategy for ambulance transport. How
Okay.
about that?
That's very unclear, but maybe that's good. Yeah, because we don't, that's not going to be the question.
That's not
in
going to be the
November.
question on the, no, that's right.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good then. I like it.
That's authorizing us to have that Australian ballot.
And then that question would be developed ahead of the
Right.
election for that.
Right, so, you know, we'll.
Which is your concern, right, Marley?
Right. And that question
Yeah.
could say, and here's what it costs.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
Right.
would need to.
Ideally.
Yeah.
I think it's basically just, saying a vote that's authorizing the town to vote a public question at,
Yeah.
Oh, it could be that vague.
yeah.
Well, I think.
I would need confirmation on that,
Yeah.
but.
Can you
I
just
mean,
repeat your motion,
Sure.
Bill?
I think I had said, shall the voters authorize the town to conduct a vote by Australian ballot in the November election,
Yeah.
whose purpose is to determine our long-range strategy for ambulance transport.
Good. I like that.
Is that a second?
Our,
Yes, it's a second.
okay. I mean, our expectation, I guess, I'm not up for election, so I'll be around, but potentially a couple of you might not be here, or all three. I mean, our expectation now is we would work toward, hey, how much is it to do it local with our own fire department? What's that cost? What's the long-term cost? Our best bet, and what are the impacts, and what's the organization, and get all that, and sort of say, here's what we're talking about, that's what we're voting for.
Exactly, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think I read this, this is the staff attorney that I reached out to. I read it as it can be very generic, and just that authorizing the town to put a public question on an Australian ballot.
Well, maybe, but I think we got to say a public question on ambulatory transport or something
Right,
like
yeah.
that.
It's very clear
Yeah, I think that when he says
Right.
public question, I think he means fill in what that public question is.
The people in the town have made it very clear that they want a town-wide vote. Like I said before, that's the only thing that's really
But-
clear to me.
In my motion, which, you have that? No, not yet. I would authorize Renee to wordsmith, as long as it leaves the intent.
Right, I think it's got to show voters that that's where they're going to be able to vote on the ambulance, because they clearly want to.
Yeah, and some things can be spoken about in the
Right,
report and all of that. We just want to make sure the language is how it should be.
Yeah.
By the-
So we
yeah.
want to do it right. So if doing it right means it has to be vague like that, then it has to be vague. But, ideally, if we can define exactly
Well,
what the vote's
not
about.
everybody, so you mean the written commentary that goes out to all the?
No.
Because not everybody's able to come to town meeting.
Okay, but
Right.
I'll say it one more time. if legally that's how the wording has to be, then that's how the wording has to be.
And then if that's the case, then in the town report,
Yeah.
and
Our
town
description,
meeting, and all kinds
my
of things.
Dog and pony show, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
That's right, we gotta sit through that again.
Is there a second? to
Yeah,
that
earlier.
motion?
I did
Oh,
second.
okay. Jeff, you look a little unsure.
So are we voting on the strategic plan one or the generic one that Renee just read off?
I would keep mine the way it is, and Renee is authorized to wordsmith it so that it, worded as
Yes.
appropriate.
Legally appropriate.
You okay, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. So all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
So wordsmithing it to authorize Renee's Caribbean vacation would not be
Yes,
appropriate?
that's good. And I'm happy to work with you
How long do you
tomorrow
wanna live in this town?
remotely on this.
Then, there we
You
go.
know, maybe, I mean, those guys are busy, that's what he said in his email,
Yes,
right? He said
yeah.
that we're really busy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can throw them the wordage
Yep.
and run it by Missy too and say, you know, how's this look? Does this look
Yeah.
okay? Is there a concern?
I think if you just mentioned ambulatory services.
All
You
right,
should
or
be fine.
ambulatory transport, ambulance transport, yeah.
Ambulatory services.
Cool, we get a helicopter.
Whatever.
That is something.
All right.
A ride to the hospital.
Hinesburg Road.
There we go.
Okay, will you guys, once
Tom,
I get these
go ahead.
changed, will you guys be available to sign tomorrow if I leave it somewhere for you guys
Yes.
to get signatures? Okay,
Yeah, so we do have to sign it.
yeah.
And I think we have, actually, we have until the 2nd.
The second is the
So,
deadline,
The
but
deadline is the 2nd.
I prefer
which
to
is
do that
Sunday.
a little sooner, so I
Super
don't have
Bowl
to be doing
Sunday.
this on
The Super
weekends.
Bowl. All right,
So I can stop by in the evening,
yeah,
Right.
yeah, tomorrow's
signing it.
signing that, yeah.
Just email us when it's ready.
All right, can we move to the next
Where?
item? Town Administrator Report. Anything happening?
Nope.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I attended the FEMA funding for public assistance yesterday.
Oh, yeah, so that, yeah.
So- What's that? From the October 31st and November 1st event. So we will, we did qualify, Chittenden County did qualify for public assistance. However, it's a pretty lengthy process. And so now I have us entered into a portal. And there's a lot of information that has to be uploaded, a lot of documentation. There's a lot of, there's FEMA that will be coming out to do site inspections, and a lot happens. But we would, FEMA, or the federal funds would be up to 75%. And then within that 25% based on a town's, either the town is responsible for all of it, or if they've updated their highway, road, and bridge standards, they've done their hazard mitigation, all those things, we've checked all those boxes. So we are at least in a good place to get a higher percentage of state funding as well to help out. Not completely, but,
Right.
you know, we've done our due diligence on that.
But how much did we authorize to do those repairs? 40?
That was my question.
40,000?
Yeah, for one, yeah, there was, I'd have to go back to,
Yeah.
I've got so many numbers.
So we could recover 75 or more.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah.
So it's not,
less-
it's not a
Less
quick.
time than a sidewalk.
Right. Let's hope, and let's not use the word sidewalk right now.
It's true.
That's right.
But, so anyway, that process is starting, at least we've gotten to that point where we've gotten that confirmation. And I'm going to reach out to CCRPC to see if they could perhaps help out and assist with any of that administrative piece of it, because it is a big slog of, you know, a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation, and a lot of pieces. So I think I did talk to them at the meeting, and they're going to consider that as a possibility. So.
All right, anything else that's worthy of 9:30 at night?
Yeah,
Make it brief.
I'll make it really brief. We're moving forward with our safety programs. Things are looking much better. We've spent some more time with VLCT, and I think we're in a better place every day.
And we have project work.
Safer place.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
that
good.
better
That's good.
equals safer, and yes.
Right, That's good.
And I have Project WorkSafe scheduled for April now. Their schedule is booked, so I've gone back and forth with him, and I have a date now reserved for that.
Fantastic.
Is that the group that's going to help on security in the town hall?
No. Project WorkSafe is, it's, so it's
VOSHA.
like VOSHA or OSHA, but it's on the side that is helpful to, to try to ensure that you're meeting these things. It's a very proactive approach of doing this. So by me contacting them or by any town contacting them, that's a good thing. And that it reflects well on us. They'll come out, they'll do a full inspection of every building. They'll send us a list of recommendations or required things that we have to fix by a certain date. And then I'll have to do a report to show this was done, this was done, this was done, and submit it.
And what kinds of things are they looking for? Can you just give me an idea?
All the different things. So the last time when I had them come, any of like the electrical panels, there needs to be a 3-foot area around them where there isn't anything stored.
So OSHA, there's a whole bunch of
There's
things.
lots.
Lockout, tag out, there's.
Oh, I thought you said it was like OSHA, but
NSDSs.
not OSHA. It is OSHA then?
Well, it's
VOSHA, Vermont OSHA.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part within that department, but it's the one that you can call in more of a proactive approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
More of a carrot than a stick. They do have a stick.
Yes.
So
yes.
when they
Still
point
involved.
things out, you do have to fix them.
Yeah.
But they've been helpful right along, and it's like, hey, we're showing you our dirty laundry, help us. We want to, what do you see? We've put in safety systems. This is all great stuff. It makes a better workplace, it makes
Absolutely,
the workplace
yeah.
cleaner and organized and systems in place. And, could pretend, cheaper premiums. And ideally, not necessarily prevent a lot of accidents just by those things, but it gets everybody thinking about those things, and it becomes more and more, well, what about this?
And the intangibles of investing in your staff is what this is all about too.
Right.
Are hugely rewarding, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I've run safety programs for a number of years.
Oh, you know
And,
them.
so we have all the safety systems, and every year we stop and say, we audit our programs, and what are all the things we need to do? So when the VOSHA guy comes, we don't get any fines. Okay, that's good. And then we stop and go, what are the things we really should be doing? Because just because you meet VOSHA doesn't necessarily mean it's safe. We focus we use a lot of ladders, so we really put additional effort in making sure ladders are safe and how we use them and all that, because that's where the accident's probably going to happen.
Right.
So anyways, I think it's great. It's definitely,
It's been a complete team effort.
yes.
Like I said,
And
Joy's
a
been
couple of
working-
years of effort.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. This has been going on for a long time.
Anything else? That's,
That's really the main,
all right.
I think the main things.
Select board forum items?
I have a question. I'm hoping we can, I just want to go over our schedule for February.
Okay, yeah. This would be a good time.
Yep.
So I'm assuming we have the first and third Wednesday.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going back to our regular schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do the
5 and 19.
the weekly thing.
And the next one, we have a open meeting on zoning.
Public hearing.
Public
Yep.
hearing
Yep.
on zoning and town map. So we kicked that down the path. They were going to make the change to the town map. And so that'll be on the agenda,
On February 5th, and then February 19th, there are 2 meetings.
another meeting, yeah.
And will both of these meetings be 7 o'clock meetings?
Yeah.
I would think,
They should
yeah.
be 7
Okay.
o'clock, I suspect.
And maybe next meeting, we could just kind of go over town meeting, what's got to happen.
Yep.
And, we usually review how we did the previous meeting with some notes, and we may have those, I may have those, like suggestions. I think
Yep.
at the meeting we come back to, we always say, well, what could have gone better? Microphones and
Yeah.
things. So we can review that. And also, we all have responsibilities for certain budgets to try to explain them. So we'll need to polish up on that.
And the microphone piece, I've already reached out to VCAM and to our person that I have working at CVU for town meeting night, so I think they'll be coordinating on that piece.
I want to think about a run or two. Like last year, we had poor Tom just like hiking it all over. Do we want to get 2 people, 2 mics?
I think
don't know.
we
It doesn't need to be
had
answered
2,
now.
we had 2 people,
like,
but
just-
only one mic was working. That was
Is that
the
what
issue.
it was? Yeah. I just remember
Yeah.
that being.
Yep.
So we'll have, that'll be a topic in
For-
the upcoming.
Yeah, doesn't need to be now.
I had one thing, I had said last time that I would do something in Front Porch Forum on the wastewater, so I didn't get around to it, but I still plan to do it.
Okay,
I'll probably run it by you.
Great, thank you.
Briefly, and just an announcement of where we are on the wastewater treatment.
And speaking of Front Porch Forum, I thanked Renee for putting that very detailed post
Yeah.
on Front Porch Forum. I don't know if you got any, if anybody responded to you also thanking you, but I thought it was very helpful, listing the VCAM, links for the VCAM for all the meetings we've had.
Yeah.
Good, yeah. I mean, it can be useful if you just are providing an announcement or information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was good. That was well done. It looked like you spent some time late at night putting that together. Anybody else have anything for Select Board Forum? Then next item is the minutes, and Aaron's only here for a couple more times, but if you would make that motion, you do it so well.
I do. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, as amended, as needed in discussion.
Second.
All right. Any,
I just found one spot where the phone must have rung or something, Val. They were really good minutes.
Yeah.
And it was a very detailed, confusing meeting. So the only spot was at the bottom of the first page, where you just hit some of the wrong keys, I think. Yep, and then 2 sentences later, Jeff asked, referring to the job description, if the position will be hard to fill, given, that just needs an N. And then Al said the challenge in getting a qualified candidate is money.
Yeah.
Needs an S instead of a T.
yeah,
And then the next sentence, it's on the next page. Phil addressed the question of regional coverage and how that affects utilization. Needs a that after how. That's all I found.
I found one item on page 2, about 2/3 of the way down. Dick St. George, Charlotte Fire and Rescue said, way. They broke their proposal down.
Oh, yeah.
Must be how.
Or when.
That was all I had found a couple of those with you, Marilee, and then that was it.
Maybe it
So
was
we
when.
found those couple, or when, maybe, yeah. So, and we know you put those in there for us to find. Any other comments on them? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Oh, you're going to abstain? Because you weren't here. Okay, with one abstention. Okay. Next item, motion to approve the warrants, including
Were there
payroll.
warrants or just payroll?
Yeah, I don't know why just this payroll's up here. I did
Misty
approve
brought those
both.
up.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the warrants as presented by the town clerk to include payroll.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we don't have an executive session.
Actually, I had about an hour-long conversation. to talk to
You almost
guys
got me
about.
going there. It's like, all right, so there is no executive session. Is there any other discussion?
Next meeting.
I want to thank you guys for, and Renee and Joy for helping make this, these last 3 meetings
Enjoyable.
enjoyable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly.
they were.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for keeping it under control.
yeah. I'm going to apologize to Paul, but I was getting, it was just like a little bit of frustration there, only because I thought we were done, yeah.
They did go very well.
Yeah, good,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I think
Yeah,
it-
thanks for giving enough time for people to
Yeah.
really speak. It felt really full, felt satisfying.
It is satisfying for me to hear all the opinions, you know, where people are coming from. And, you know, at first you go, oh, of course, and then you go, oh, I get it now. I see.
And
Yeah.
you know, as passionate as the firemen are about getting the ambulance, I really think they understood the concerns.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And I think they understand that in the end, if we do take this time, that, and people really get to get their questions answered, we'll have a better decision in the end. And I think that the community as a whole will feel good about it. Maybe at the end of the day, obviously, not everyone's going to agree, but at least they'll feel like they were heard, the process was, you know, they saw the process, and I think they could respect it.
Who wants to join me in Kumbaya? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Is a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Thank you.
Thank you.